Hey, Rachel.
Hey, John.
What's the name of your podcast?
What's the name of our podcast?
Yeah.
It's Open Mic Night of the Living Dead.
Cool.
Yeah.
What movie are you covering today?
I mean, you know what movie we're covering today.
Yeah, what is it?
It's Sinners.
Ooh, I love that movie.
Yeah.
Can I be on the podcast?
What? I mean, why are you asking?
I just want to be on the podcast.
But you're always on the podcast. Why are you asking me for permission to be on the podcast?
Listen, everything's cool. I just want to be on the podcast. Can I be on it?
You should just go ahead and be on the podcast then if you want to be.
Is that a yes?
Yes? Oh, shit.
The creature's creeping right behind you. I hope you finally find a little slice of peace and light. 'Cause it comes crashing down tonight. Welcome to the open mic. When we call your name, you'll die. But there's no need to dread. This is the open mic night of the living dead.
And scene. All right. That's like our first ever, what do you call it? The Conservatory of Open Mic Night Actors?
I guess so.
Repertoire theater?
Repertoire theater. That was pretty good. I mean, it's more improv,
Yeah.
at least the way it was for me, given the way you prepared me for it, which was not a lot.
I think it worked as well as I could have hoped.
Amazing.
So yes, I am here. You've invited me.
I've
and I
invited
appreciate
you
it.
into the podcast.
And who are you?
I'm Rachel.
I am John. This is Open Mic Night of the Living Dead. And like we said, this week we're covering 2025's Sinners.
Yeah.
And first off, spoiler warning, we will be doing a deep dive today. So you should be aware we will be giving things away. And as this is a newer movie, I don't know if everybody out there's seen it. If you haven't yet, I highly recommend it. But feel free to join us either way. Do you have any other sort of warnings to give on this episode, Miss Rachel?
Actually, a similar warning to our last deep dive episode in that we are going to be discussing a lot of the themes and topics that come up in the movie. And in this particular movie's case, that includes a lot of stuff about race in the United States. And so I think it's important that we say that we are two middle-aged white people who live in the countryside of New England. We do not have the experiences that the people in the film have had. And so we want to put that out there. There's so much to talk about in this movie, but we're going to do our best to do it with sensitivity and with respect. But it's possible that it's definite that we're going to miss some stuff and possibly misspeak. And so we would love to hear from you either way, but just want to kind of place ourselves in that spot before we talk about some potentially sensitive topics.
Aside from all the thematic things, it's going to be hard to cover everything about this movie in a podcast. You know, I think we could do 2 episodes on this. We're not going to do that. We're just going to do the best we can to get in as much interesting stuff as possible in a couple of hours here. And, you know, so I apologize if we don't cover something that you're hoping to hear or what have you, but there's a lot of cool information on the internet. That is one of the advantages of this being a newer movie, is that there's a lot of stuff out there on it, videos on YouTube. I'm sure I didn't really go into that, but
there's a ton. And I, again, will have some things in the show notes if you are interested in diving deeper on some of these topics, particularly in places where I was leaning on the scholarship and work of others. Sometimes that scholarship is on Reddit, to be perfectly honest, and sometimes it's in blog posts or articles. So there's anything you're curious about, head to the show notes. And if you have any other questions, you can always reach out with any specific questions about citations.
Oh, and the other thing is that if you've been with us for a while, if this is not your first open mic night of the Living Dead podcast, we are changing things up a tiny bit. I think we're really including the same sections and information that we always do, but we've rearranged things a little bit. This is a bit of an experiment. I almost said experience and changed halfway through, but this is episode 34. We've always said we reserve the right to tweak things, to try to improve things, and we're doing that today. So hopefully we get through it without too much confusion on our end.
Yeah, we've changed up the structure of the show a little bit. So if this is your first episode with us, that won't matter at all. And if it is your 34th episode with us, hopefully you will find that it improves your experience and not the latter.
What's the latter?
Improves and doesn't
exprove. Jinx, you owe me a Chicago beer.
Okay.
So is this the first movie that we definitely have the same first experience watching it?
I think so. I don't think any of our other movies.
Maybe Fright Night.
I think Fright Night we did see together for the first time. But other than that, I think this is, yeah, I think you're right.
But this one, I know the exact date that we watched it for the first time. Do you?
I mean, I could if I went and looked at my movie diary.
Because we watched this for my birthday.
Oh, I forgot we watched it for your birthday.
We did not get to see it in theaters, which would be amazing. And when they brought it back in sort of this Academy Award run, it didn't come to our area here in the middle of the woods.
True.
So, but we watched it on our bigger television, which is as close as we can get to a theater experience here.
Yes, there's 2 TVs. One of them is bigger.
And it was like an afternoon watch, and it's in June. I'll give you that much information. I don't need you stealing my identity, okay? If you're out there, Remick, listen, you're not getting my birthday. You can't even listen. If you want my social security number, I'll tell you right now, it's 642-9222. So take that. But you're not getting my birthday. But it's in June. I'm a Gemini. And actually there was a thing
Such a Gemini
on Instagram the other day that was like, I think it was the Academy Award Best Picture nominees, which movie would be you based on your zodiac sign? And I got Sinners because Gemini's the twins.
The twins, that's right.
So that was pretty neat. But what I think that you've seen it twice now.
Yes.
I've seen it 3 times. How was your second viewing in comparison to your first?
Second viewing was better than the first. And I'm surprised at how much better it was. Not that the first was bad, but I think after we finished watching it the second time, both of us looked at each other and said, I think I have to change my rating or like change my ranking for last year's movies, because this was kind of low on my top 25 list or my top 13 list for last year. And I think it was lower because I think I just didn't. There's so much to get in this movie, and I did not get it all in the first viewing. And so the second viewing, I saw so much more. And now that I've done even more research on it, now there's even more I could see. I think my rating stayed the same, which was still very high. My ranking would go up even higher in terms of all the movies we watched in 2025. So yeah, I really was even more impressed on a second watch.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to our top 25 of 2025 episode, you definitely should. That's a great place to go and get some recommendations for movies you might not have seen or considered. I don't want to give away what our number 1 was, but it wasn't Sinners. Sinners was close for me. And I looked at Rachel, I was like, if I had to make the top 25 of 2025 today, Sinners probably would be number 1. So
it's real good.
Really, really good. And there's so much to it. And I think that's part of it. It's like this time I was sitting down taking notes, and sometimes the note-taking part takes away from the experience for me. But it really, I found myself just in it.
It flowed much more smoothly for me the second time around. The pace, I mean, not that the pacing was bad at all the first time, but I think there was just so much and kind of letting it wash over me. I think the second time it sat differently. And it felt like it went by fast. There was no moment where I was like, is this over yet?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think the first time too, and you mentioned this in our top 25 episode, but I think you said that sort of the hype around it and similar to Weapons for you.
Yeah.
That the hype makes it a little bit more difficult for you to, I don't want to speak for you.
Meet the film where it is. I think when there's so much hype around it and there's so many opinions on it, even though we try to avoid stuff about the movie before we watch it, I have a hard time not taking that into consideration. And for me, hype is often a negative impact on how I receive a movie. Not because I have high expectations for it, but just because I'm like more suspicious of it, particularly when there's a lot of mainstream hype from people that don't normally like the kinds of movies that we like. I enjoy being a little bit different from most people. And Sinners is a film that has transcended genre, really. And I love that for the genre, but I also am strangely possessive of horror films. So I am really glad that it has been as popular as it is and that there is so much discourse around the film and inspired by the film. And watching it this time, being a little bit further away from all the hype, I think had a positive impact on my impression of the film.
Yeah, and I think the hype really did have a negative impact on the film in the long run, which I think years from now that will sort of dissipate in a way. And I'll get a bit more into that in a few minutes. The last thing I was going to say here is it certainly was well received with critics, which I don't always align my opinion with critics. I mean, we've talked about plenty of movies along the way that would be extremely disfavored by critics. But the main reason we're doing Sinners today, we didn't spin this on our randomizer wheel, on the wheel of horror. We picked this today because the Academy Awards are coming up right around the corner, and we wanted to celebrate the fact that this wonderful film has been nominated for so many Academy Awards. I don't need any of my horror movies to be nominated for awards, but I think it's a positive thing, and I'm hopeful that will mean, good things for horror for the years to come. But who knows? Things can change really quickly in sort of that realm. But were you able to find any lovely summaries or?
Just one. Similarly to the last one, I wonder if Letterboxd is now just taking IMDb's summaries, because once again, they were exactly the same. And usually I try to put them together. This one was pretty decent, but summary of this film's plot: trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, right?
Works for me.
Yeah. That's about as quick as you could explain the plot of that movie.
Well, and the evil they're talking about, again, last time I'm going to say spoiler warning, but if you haven't seen the film and you don't want to hear anything about it, go away. But stay with us, seriously. Obviously, the evil they're talking about is vampires.
Ooh.
And I was able to avoid that for the most part until I read a tiny little snippet that said something about vampires. Up until then, I try not to see trailers for some of these movies because they give so much away. And I assume the vampire aspect is revealed in the trailers. But yeah, this film was released in the United States on April 18th of 2025. It is a longer movie, especially in this genre. It's 138 minutes, so a couple hours and change. The budget was somewhere between $90 and $100 million, and the worldwide box office returns were approximately $369 million.
Wow.
So they did okay. They made a good return on investment. And
that Coogler guy's going places.
Yeah. And For inflation, the budget was somewhere between $90 and $100 million, and the worldwide box office returns was approximately $369 million. You see what I did?
I do see what you did.
I didn't change any, although there probably has been inflation since
2025. Yes,
Yeah.
probably, which is why we're going to keep seeing more horror movies
and
come out.
the studio was Proximity Media Studios, and the distributor was Warner Brothers. Like we said, especially critically, the overall response was positive, but there has been some divisiveness around this film. The film's been widely praised for its ambition, its blending of genres, the integration of all the incredible music, and the large format cinematography. And of course, let's not forget the dual performance by Michael B. Jordan. Some critics push back on the movie's length, its narrative density, which I think we kind of touched on when we're talking about there's so much there. But to me, that's not a problem. To me, that's something that there's just more to discover every time I go back. And then also there were some complaints about the scale versus intimacy balance, but I actually feel like that works out really well too. In terms of some like mixed or negative quotes from critics, from RogerEbert.com, it says, the director reaches for epic scope when intimacy would do just fine. To me, that sort of juxtaposition is kind of what's so cool about it.
Is RogerEbert.com Roger Ebert or just someone?
It's probably AI that's going to do reviews for the rest of time.
Because I was going to say, figures that he wouldn't like Center, but is he still writing movie reviews?
To be honest,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Well,
He
whoever
might have
it
a
is
team.
taking over his grumpy old man perspective on horror movies.
Yeah, except he kind of like took a turn, I feel like, in like the 90s. And it was more positive about, because I think we've been surprised by some of his reviews in the past few episodes. But anyway, the National Review, I don't really know what that publication is, but they said they called the movie mildly obscene fake lore turns the blues into horror movie trash.
What?
Horror movie trash.
Have they seen other horror movies?
National Review, your magazine online trash.
You're snobby, snooty.
Unless you're reviewing this podcast, then I think you're great. Tip Top Vulture said the movie was bold and ambitious, but occasionally overwhelmed by its own density. So again, on sort of the density of the narrative. But for every negative review, there's certainly a bajillion positive reviews. A.A. Dowd at Rolling Stone said Coogler is swinging wide and far beyond the boundaries of franchise fare. If Sinners is messy, it's sometimes pretty glorious too. Time magazine said that it is a haunting, gory, and seductive vampire movie that feels both mythic and grounded. Richard Brody at The New Yorker described the film as virtuosic fusion of historical realism and supernatural horror. And Wendy Ide at The Observer called the movie mythic, muscular, and emotionally true. Coogler's vision feels expansive without losing its human core.
I like the pointing out of how it mixes historical fiction or historical accuracy with horror, because I love me a period piece. You do not usually as much, which I'm sure is something that's interesting about this for you. I love recreated historical scenes and settings. So I hadn't thought of it specifically in that way. But yeah, this is like a period piece that's part of what I really love about it. But that's interesting that reviewer pointed that out.
As I get older, I can go further back.
Okay.
This is not too far back for me, and I don't think it has been for a while. Like this time period, like early 1900s is okay. So when we start getting into like white wigs and, you know, clothes that I'd look damn good in, to be honest, you know, like a petticoat, stuff like that.
Petticoat and a wig.
Yep.
Yep.
With a powdered wig, you wake up in the morning and there's just like a powder stain on my pillow because I forgot to take my wig off.
That tracks. Yeah, you would look really good in old white guy European clothes, probably. I would look great in those dresses.
Indeed.
But that's not where we are right now.
No.
That's a different horror movie.
Sinners has done really well in the awards arena, and that's why we're talking about it today. And I usually talk about sort of what awards they might have been nominated for, just in passing. I do want to just say that I believe, it's my understanding that Sinners' 16 nominations for the Academy Awards is an all-time record for any film, I think.
Incredible.
Just really quickly, it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director for Ryan Coogler, Best Actor Michael B. Jordan, Best Supporting Actor for Delroy Lindo, Best Supporting Actress Wunmi Mosaku, Best Original Screenplay for Ryan Coogler, Best Casting Francine Meisler, Best Cinematography for Autumn Gerald Arkapaw, Best Production Design Hannah Beechler and Monique Champagne, Best Costume Design, Ruth E. Carter. And I think she's got some sort of record for nominations, the costume designer. Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Best Original Score by Ludwig Göransson. Best Original Song for I Lied to You. Best Visual Effects and Best Sound. And really, all of those things are so fantastic. That's why, just top to bottom, this movie. I did one of those kissing my fingertips.
Kisses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's all good stuff, man.
And it won some Golden Globes. It won Best Original Screenplay and the Cinematic and Box Office Achievement Award. It was nominated for several others. Just an overview of other awards highlights real quick. It was nominated for 17 Critics' Choice Awards and had multiple wins there. It was nominated for 13 BAFTAs. It had 21 nominations and 14 wins at the Black Reel Awards. It swept 7 categories at the Astro Awards. It had 10 wins at the Online Film Critics Society. It also won 2 Grammy Awards, one for Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media and the second for Best Compilation Soundtrack for Visual Media. So, it did pretty darn good in that realm, and we'll see what happens at the Academy Awards. It's up against some fantastic movies, for sure. 2025 was a pretty great year for horror, right?
Oh, yeah. That's what was so difficult about making our top list earlier this year.
And although, 2025, not unlike other genres or other recent years, the landscape was heavily driven by like legacy sequels and franchise continuations or IP revivals. And that's one way Sinners stood out magnificently, is that it was a large-scale original horror. It was a period piece, like you mentioned, Southern Gothic, and music-infused mythic horror. Right now, it seems that horror occupies sort of a prestige space in the awards culture. I don't know how long that's going to last, and I don't know if that's overall a good thing or not, but I'm happy for it now.
Well, it's kind of like when this is weird. Go with me here. Christianity, when it first came about, was a religion against the mainstream government and those who were in authority. And then it got kind of like picked up by the main culture and then used to oppress people for thousands of years. I look at horror. Horror is in opposition to, in conversation with the overarching culture. And it talks about things that the mainstream culture is afraid to talk about or will not talk about. And in that way, I get nervous when horror gets kind of taken over by the mainstream. Is that making sense? That's the connection that's come. It's like 400 and Constantine all over again, where I'm glad that people who hate horror have talked to me about Sinners because it's such a good film. When horror becomes mainstream, then that starts to change the conversation. So, but I think there's plenty of independent horror creators who are not going to start bootlicking anytime soon. So.
Yeah, no, I have those same concerns, and I think some people are overwhelmed by those concerns. I'm not overwhelmed by them because I do think that there will be no shortage of people making the lower budget, sometimes terrible
yes,
movies. But if you went to the movie theaters way back in 2025 and you weren't seeing Sinners, some other films you might have seen, and some of these were streaming only as well, but other horror movies that came out in 2025 were Clown in a Cornfield, Final Destination Bloodlines, the new installment of the Fear Street series on Netflix, Fear Street Prom Queen, not as good as the first three. Bring Her Back, which we absolutely loved.
Mm-hmm.
Dangerous Animals. 28 Years Later. Mithrigan 2.0. I think that's how you pronounce that.
Yep,
I'm
right
just
on.
reading what's on here. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Weapons. And The Ugly Stepsister.
Never have I seen all of the movies that you have listed as
You haven't
a
seen
cohort.
You didn't see Fear Street Prom Queen.
Oh, fine. That's the only one, though. The
I
rest
did.
of those I've seen.
You might have to watch that on your own. I've seen it. I don't need to see it anytime soon.
Okay, cool.
And just for this, the purpose of this episode, since we're talking about the 2026 Academy Awards, the other Best Picture nominees that you could have seen were Begonia, F1, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, Sentimental Value, The Secret Agent, Train Dreams, and of course Sinners.
Yeah, I've only seen one of those.
Yes, me as well, but we'll get there eventually. We should definitely probably see Frankenstein and Begonia sooner rather than later.
Yes, those two are on my list. The rest, meh.
And I think Hamnet, that's a horror, right? It's about like a ham in a net.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Can't wait to see that.
Definitely not a period piece.
Yeah. It's just a modern pig in a net.
Pig in a net.
So give me some info on ratings.
Yeah, so I was actually surprised about the IMDb rating is only 7.5.
Shameful.
I know, and Letterboxd was 4.1, which I guess is a little higher than usual.
I'll take the Letterboxd.
I like that one sounds more in line, but Rotten Tomatoes 97% critics, 96% fans.
Yeah, that's good.
That's more like what I was expecting. My personal rating is funny. I went back and forth between a 4 and a 4.5. I have a 5-scale rating. I kept going back and forth. And after our top 25 episode, I thought I left it at a 4. After we watched it a second time, I went back to change it to a 4.5. And it was already a 4.5. So 4.5 for me. And for our podcast rating, which is on a scale of 3, 1 is trash, 2 is almost everything, and 3s are like, you gotta watch this, you should watch this. If you want to learn about horror and love horror, why haven't you watched this? For me, this is a 3.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. On my 10-point scale with half-scale permissions, I'm out of vocab words today.
That's okay.
I often battle with my ability to speak, Exhibit A. But today I'm out of vocab words and can't speak, so good luck, listeners. No, I have it at a solid 8.5 right now. If I could do 8.75, my half point doesn't allow for that. It's prohibited. It might be an 8.75. Maybe it's a 9 eventually. I don't know. We're so close to it still, it's hard to tell. But I think this one's really will stand the test of time. We'll listen back to this 20 years from now and see how I did. But
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you on our 1 trash, 2 everything else, and 3 must see tier scale. This is definitely a 3 for me. So that's a double 3 from us.
Double 3.
Take that, RogerEbert.com.
All right. So here's where we're going to start with one of our new segments, right?
A new segment that has a lot of the same stuff in it.
Just the same stuff, just rearranged. But this was your idea. So do you want to introduce us?
All right, let's head in to Let's Make a Movie. Okay.
All right.
We are in Let's Make a Movie. where we talk about the making of the movie. The movie is Sinners from 2025. Who made it? Ryan Coogler.
Yeah, he did.
He wrote it. He directed it. He was a producer on it. Other producers included Zinzi Coogler and Sev Ohanian, among others. Cinematography was artfully crafted by Autumn Durald Arkapaw. It was edited by Michael P. Shaver. The composer, Ludwig Göransson. Production design, again, brilliant, Hannah Beechler. And costume design by Ruth E. Carter. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Ryan Coogler here. There's a lot more information out there, and there's so much that we want to cover. I'm not going to go too far with it, but he was born in 1986. Is he the first director that we've had that is younger than us?
Oh, shut up. I guess probably. Well, no, I mean, I think he may be the first director who is younger now than us. A lot of our directors were younger than us when they directed their movies.
Oh, yeah.
But yes.
I mean, younger than us now.
Yes, I think he might be.
He was born in Oakdale, California. He went to USC School of Cinematic Arts. His breakout movie was his original film, Fruitvale Station, in 2013. Did you see that?
Never have, but I am familiar with it.
I'm going to have to watch some of his other movies. I must admit I haven't yet because we've been so focused on horror films. But he directed Creed in 2015. I haven't seen any of those movies.
Me either.
I can't even think of what they're called right now. Rocky. My brain would only get me through Rambo. Rocky.
Close.
I do intend to watch them, though, and I'm sorry that that's a blind spot. In 2018, he directed Black Panther.
I've seen that.
Which was the first superhero film nominated for Best Picture. And then the sequel in 2022, he directed Wakanda Forever. Did you see that one?
I think I made it that far. I had a little time period where I was trying to work my way through the MCU, and I got stuck on the Netflix shows, and I never made it past, I think, season 2 of Luke Cage. I was going chronologically, but I did see Wakanda Forever, I think.
So, for Ryan Coogler, this was his first fully original feature since Fruitvale Station. It draws from Mississippi Delta blues culture, Black American folklore, and of course vampire mythology as exploitation. And so at the end of the day, Sinners blends prestige scale with mythic horror to fantastic result.
Yeah, great effect.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. See? I told you. I've been recording too much music these last few days.
That's true.
Anyway, did you have any notes on any other filmmakers or cast crew?
Just a few more on the crew that I ran into in my travels. Mike Ralla was production visual effects supervisor, and James Alexander, who was the visual effects producer. Both of them were Marvel veterans. I think, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about cinematography, but they both were digital movie makers, big VFX, visual effects guys. And so some really interesting material out there about what it was like working on film and how that was for them as filmmakers. And then also just want to call out Mike Fontaine, who's the prosthetic makeup designer, did some really cool work. He has done, a lot of people on this film have done a lot of superhero stuff, which is interesting because this movie does not feel like a superhero movie. And yet, because superhero movies are kind of bland in my brain, I watch them and then they kind of fall away. They don't stick, and this movie sticks. So I wonder what that's about. But yeah, go ahead.
I think that Ryan Coogler, stuck with several people too over the course of some of these movies, which I'll get to later, but that might be where they came from. He might have picked them up.
Oh, yeah. Because he and Arkapaw worked on Wakanda Forever together, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think Mike Ralla and James Alexander also were part of some of those projects. And then Mike Fontaine has worked on DC movies, but The Penguin, The Batman, Joker, also did The Dead Don't Die, which is that boring zombie movie we watched on a plane. Sorry. And also on Green Room, which is a really good movie that I liked a lot. That was not boring. Are we ready? Should I talk about cast a little bit?
Yeah, who's in this movie? Everybody's so good.
It is pretty great. And for our longtime listeners, this is one place that we're trying something new. We're going to talk about cast in the Let's Make a Movie section instead of in story time. We will talk about the characters in story time, but for right now, we're just talking about the actors. So first of all, of course, Michael B. Jordan, who plays Smoke and Stack, plays two characters to great effect. I don't think I remember after the first moment that they are the same person. Like the first time you see them and you're like, oh, those are both Michael B. Jordan. And after that, they are such distinct, unique characters. Michael B. Jordan was raised in Newark, New Jersey. His middle name is Bakari and means noble promise in Swahili. He has been in acting for a very long time. He started out on TV. He was on The Wire when he was 15.
Cool.
So, yeah, which I did not know this much about him. He was in Friday Night Lights and Parenthood in the Oddies. Or the Naughties, I heard someone call them on one of my British podcasts, because like the not, right? Like not 6 is 06. So I kind of like that, like in the Naughties.
Except it wasn't a very naughty decade.
No, it was not. But we're saying not, well, whatever. O-U-G-H-T, not A-U-G-H-T. I'm not sure if I can distinguish between those two vocally. He played Oscar Grant in the award-winning Fruitvale Station, of course, and then was in Creed and Black Panther, as you've already discussed. He was also in an HBO adaptation of Fahrenheit 451 that I didn't know about in 2018 that I think I would like to watch. He was homeschooled, and although he was allowed to play basketball in Newark at the Newark Arts School, maybe, I can't remember the name of the school, but I thought that was interesting. So many people who begin their acting careers early are not able to go to traditional schooling, but clearly are still very successful in their chosen career. And he does have a sister who is an Emmy Award-winning producer. So his parents were not in show business, but his family is connected to it. Miles Caton played Sammy Moore, or Preacher Boy. He is kind of a breakthrough in this. This is his film debut.
Crazy.
I know, crazy. He is, I think, 21 this year. So he was 20 when this came out. His mother and his aunt are both lifelong gospel singers, and his grandfather is a working Pentecostal pastor. So he has a gospel background. He was born in Brooklyn. He's been singing since he was 2 or 3. He has won a number of awards for this role already. He also co-wrote Last Time I Seen the Sun, which is the song at the end of the movie. Co-wrote that, which is pretty epic.
I love that song.
Beautiful song. He was noticed in 2017. There was a video of him singing Nina Simone's Feeling Good that went viral, and it was sampled in an opening video for one of Jay-Z's songs. So I'm guessing that is how he that was how he was discovered, and somewhere along the way. He toured with her in 2022 and released his own debut single in 2023. So he was a musician, did a little bit of acting here and there, but this really was his acting debut. And also he learned to play guitar for this film. He was not a guitar player beforehand.
Voice like molasses.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes. Really cool. Very interesting voice.
Unique.
Very. Yeah. Although can't say very unique, because unique is just unit one, right? So yes, he has a unique voice. I'm sorry. That was to me, that was to myself, not to you or anybody else. Everybody else can just say what they want, but try to be accurate with my speaking.
Well, something can be unique on a scale, I think. This is me defending you now to yourself.
Okay, great.
Rachel, number 1.
How many are there?
While I agree grammatically unique is sufficient, I do think there are scales of unique because, this movie is not unique in the sense if you're comparing it to, like, what's that movie? But Robert Rodriguez with
From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Very true.
A party and a bunch of vampires show up.
Yes.
But that didn't cross my mind watching it, only thinking about it after, did it? In no way do I think that it's trying to copy that or anything like that. So it's not 100% from top to bottom unique. It's very unique.
That's okay. That's fair. And also language is about meaning and not about exactness, which is why we can make up words and words change meaning and words like language is about meaning. So saying very unique. Okay, fine. I've convinced myself through you that I'm right.
You're welcome.
Marriage.
I'll bill you.
Let's move on to Haley Steinfeld, who plays Mary. I was really not familiar with her before this. I knew she was a singer, but also an actress. Her film debut was in True Grit in 2010 with Jeff Bridges, Josh Brolin, and Matt Damon, and she got an Oscar nomination. She was very young.
Wow.
At that time, so that was really big. She also was in The Homesman, in the teens, Pitch Perfect 2, and The Edge of 17. So
it's interesting she doesn't sing in this.
Very interesting given the musicality of the film. Her grandfather was Filipino and Black. This is important, or maybe not important, but relevant given the character that she plays, who is part Black but passes for white. And so I think that's a piece of information about her that's relevant. She was signed with Republic Records in 2015. And she has released several critically and commercially successful singles. Also, she was in Taylor Swift's Bad Blood music video.
Who wasn't?
Me?
I was.
Oh, that's right. I was wondering where you were.
I was one of the Victoria's Secret supermodels.
That makes sense. I remember when that music video came out, we had just started dating, right?
Yeah. That song got a lot of play, was popular with the children in our house.
That's true. They
and
were
maybe
very...
me a little bit.
Maybe just a little. So that's Mary. We've got Wunmi Mosaku, who plays Annie. She is a Nigerian and British actress. She has a lot of credits across the pond. She was in the BBC Two miniseries Moses Jones in 2009, and Vera 2011 to 2012. She also was in the MCU. She was in the Loki series 2021 to 23. Where she played Hunter B-15. I never made it that far, so I don't know what that role was. But she won the Gotham Independent Film Award and has been nominated for an Academy Award, a BAFTA, Critics' Choice, and Actor Award for her role in this film. So Wunmi Mosaku, really some great interviews by her if you are more interested in her. Very interesting interviews about this movie and about how she took the role and the things she learned throughout filming. I was really happy to learn some more about her. We've got Jack O'Connell, who plays Remick. He, again, very famous for a lot of his work in the UK and British film. So his breakout role was in the late noughties, 2009 to 2010, in the British TV series Skins. He's played a lot of bad boys, it seems. He was also in Eden Lake, which we haven't seen but are supposed to. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen it, but he's in that. Many TV dramas, a lot of independent films. Also plays Jimmy Crystal in 28 Years Later from 25, and then 28 Years Later, Bone Temple this year.
Wait, who is he in that?
He's Jimmy Crystal.
Whoa.
Did you not know that?
We've only watched that the one time. I do intend to rewatch it before we see Bone Temple. But
yes, and it's only kind of in the very end, right? Where that character
maybe.
comes out.
No
I can't
spoilers.
remember.
Doesn't really matter. Doesn't affect it.
Yeah. But yeah, so he was kind of in 2 huge horror movies in 2025. He's a former footballer. He had his career ended by a series of injuries.
Soccer, right?
Yes, soccer.
Just for the American listeners out there.
Of course. His dad was Irish. His mom was British. Did I do that right? English? Shoot.
I can never figure that out.
I know, and I should know it because I listen to a lot of podcasts from the UK. But he is Irish, which of course has an impact on his role here as he plays the Irish vampire. He was an Irish dancer in childhood, so he was able to bring that back. And he has never played banjo before, although he said, I have a couple of guitars. So he learned how to play banjo for this movie, which I also thought was really cool.
We have a banjo.
We do have a banjo. Does anybody play it?
I did before I met you.
Well,
it's really like grimy. It needs like new stuff. It's very loud too.
Yeah, that's all we need is more noise in the house.
More noise.
We've got Delroy Lindo playing Delta Slim. What a performance.
Yeah.
Just brilliant. We'll talk about Delta Slim as a character in a little bit. But
where else have I seen him? He's definitely very familiar to me.
Oh, he's in a bunch of stuff. His big break was Spike Lee's Malcolm X in 1992. But in the mid-90s, he was in a bunch of movies. Get Shorty, Clockers, Feeling Minnesota, A Life Less Ordinary, which is a Danny Boyle film.
Oh.
He kind of had like a lull in his career in the early noughties, and then he has had a bit of a resurgence. And he has gotten an Oscar nod for this role, which
Yeah.
I think is well deserved. Such a rich performance. He was raised in the UK until his teens, but still considers himself very much an American. His parents were Jamaican, and then he moved to the UK. I think it's really interesting that a lot of the cast from this movie and also the crew are kind of global, right? And this story is so deeply American, but it's also about appropriation and culture and movement and what people take with them when they move. And a lot of the actors in this, I think a lot of the cast have brought that to this performance just in their families. So that's just a thread I kind of saw.
Well, and what is America? It's blending of all the cultures. Like, not to get on some sort of diatribe about that, but like, wait, diatribe? That's not the right word.
Yeah, no, that's maybe a little, like an angry rant.
Yeah, but it's
The story of America is the story of immigrants and people who've moved and cultures coming together and sometimes clashing. And yeah, that's a really big piece of this film. There's so many people in this movie. They're so good. Grace Chow is played by Lee Jun Lee. She was born in Shanghai, then moved to Colombia, and then came to the U.S. She was originally a dancer, and she's been in multiple TV roles, including the show The Exorcist. There's an Exorcist show, which I didn't know about, so there's another rabbit hole. Bo Chow is played by Yao, who is a Malaysian actor who has appeared in a lot of Singaporean movies, but this is his first Hollywood film. I thought he did great as well. His stage name is Yao, just Y-A-O. But I thought Yao and Grace were really, or Yao and Lee Jun Lee, Bo and Grace Chow were a really lovely pairing of supporting actors. Jamie Lawson plays Perlene. She was in The Batman and The Penguin, also played a young Michelle Obama in The First Lady. And she was in another 2025 film, The Running Man. She played Sheila.
oh cool.
Yeah. So we saw her also recently in that, which I had forgotten about. There's Omar Benson Miller, plays Cornbread. He has a lot of TV credits. Great job in this role as Cornbread. Literally everybody in this movie. And that's about it, other than Old Sammy, played by Buddy Guy, who is a Chicago blues legend. He was 88 when he made this movie. A lot of Sammy's story is modeled after Buddy Guy's life. He moved to Chicago at 21 from Louisiana. His parents were sharecroppers, just like Sammy's. And then in Chicago, he met Muddy Waters, another blues legend. And so he's got 9 Grammy Awards, Kennedy Center honors, just really, really great casting.
No, yeah. And he really is a true blues legend for people who are not necessarily familiar with that genre of music or what have you. Like, I think a lot of people think of B.B. King, who's no longer with us, but Buddy Guy's in that same tier of everything. So
Yeah.
But in terms of the filming of the movie was filmed between April and July of 2024, and it was filmed in several locations. Louisiana doubled for Mississippi in this movie. This movie takes place in 1932 Mississippi. It was mostly shot in Louisiana and some in Atlanta, Georgia. Donaldsonville, Louisiana was transformed into 1932 Clarksdale, which was sort of that downtown area, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yep.
Annie's farmhouse scenes were filmed in St. Bernard Parish. Braithwaite was used for swamp exteriors. Bogalusa and Labadyville, I apologize.
We're from New England.
Yes. I've not been to these places yet, but those were the locations used for the cotton fields and their travel sequences. And then Greater New Orleans was the general production hub. Some of the exterior sequences were shot on like fully dressed Main Street sets where they changed everything to look like the old-timey times, The old-timey times. Cotton field transitions were filmed in rural parish landscapes. And the farmhouse scenes were anchored by oak tree canopies to give you that Southern Gothic framing.
So gorgeous.
Obviously, there are so many great scenes and set pieces in this movie, but I really wanted to if I only have a chance to talk about one scene in this movie, do you know which scene I'm probably going to talk about?
The music scene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally, when I was going to do research on it, I just typed in Google that scene in Sinners, and it was everything that popped up.
I have a few notes on that from special effects perspectives, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, just for this scene, why don't you chime in with what you got for that?
It. Yep.
If that doesn't mess you up too much.
No, not at all.
And in fact, you might be able to be more eloquent than me. Then it was very unique of me to say it that way. So, you know the scene that I'm talking about. They're at the juke joint. We're in the middle of the evening. Everybody's had some drinks at this point. Everybody's really starting to have a great time. It looks amazing.
Looks so good.
And so preacher boy Sammy performs a song on his guitar that becomes so transcendent, it summons the spirits of the past and the future. And it's really in this scene where this whole musical number catches the attention of Remick and his cronies outside. Coogler had worked with the composer Ludwig Göransson before on a couple of his other movies and gave him the script, and Göransson said that reading this scene gave him goosebumps, and he knew it would be a challenge to pull off. Even though I've done some research, I'm still not entirely sure how they pulled it all off, but it starts with the blues number by Sammy and really gets sort of overscored and underscored with several different styles of music, including Delta blues, hip hop, rock, psychedelic rock. And then by the end, you even have like traditional African and Chinese music all mixed together. And it's while the scene's going on in the farmhouse, in the juke joint, I should say, because it was a mill, not a farmhouse.
Yes.
You have just it's full of people dancing, but then you have the interweaving of these different characters that represent both people from the past and people from the future. So the visual effects team and cinematographer Arkapaw, they developed sort of the pre-visual, it's called previs, I guess, on what their idea was and how they wanted to start filming it. And from that, Göransson created a demo, and then they met at the soundstage in New Orleans where they were planning to shoot the scene. They mapped it out with the camera, the route that the camera was going to take, what musicians need to be, where they're going to be, where the actors are going to be. They also had to account for the fact that Michael B. Jordan was going to be in there twice in some parts of it. So the camera operator was there with dancers, and they created a video. And Göransson created another piece of music that tied everything in together. And Coogler said they did a ton of rehearsals. They had to keep adding crew to make it work, to get all the timing right and everything. We're going to get more into cinematography in a minute, but they shot the sequence using IMAX cameras, which came with pros and cons. Obviously, the pro being the larger format, but the con, the main negative to doing that, is the size of the reels. Because of how it works, it would have been impossible to film it in one take. They can only film for about 1.5 minutes at a time, or maybe 1 minute and 45 seconds, because they rip through film at such speed that you can only shoot for so long. So they had to break it up into sections, that were basically as long as they could shoot on one reel of film.
That's interesting, because I saw that they shot it in IMAX as a single 3.5 minute take. So I wonder if that's referring to something else.
I don't even think it's possible to shoot that long in IMAX.
There's an article that I was looking at that spoke about this scene. It's from Kodak.com. That'll be in the show notes if you are interested in the deep dive. So I'm wondering what I've misread there, because I believe you that that's the case. But just thinking about how huge they must have been. And all I had about this was that they had extensive blocking rehearsals, that it was really all the heavy lifting was done in the preparation for the shot, which is really cool. Yeah,
and most of this information that I'm pulling from is from Entertainment Weekly article, but I found a couple of other articles that basically said the same thing. So that's why I kind of went with this. If I'm
No, I think I'm probably wrong because I didn't go deep on this. This was just something I saw in my other research. So I bet you're right.
Annie, Wunmi Masaku, she remembers filming the sequence in 3 parts, which were then stitched together to look like a continuous shot. And each portion took about half a day to film. And they'd go back and watch it, and they'd, look at the timing of things, and sometimes they'd have to reshoot it. It had to be so perfect to get what they wanted, and also with the twin work again, to make sure they were blocking it correctly for Michael B. Jordan's characters. And while all this was going on, Göransson was there DJing it live for these shoots of this scene. Wow. Which plays a big part, because you always wonder that sometimes when they film like party scenes or stuff in movies, sometimes they'll have like just a background song playing that they'll later fill in once they have the rights to whatever song they're going to use. Sometimes they don't even have any music playing. So that's why sometimes you'll see a scene like on a TV show or maybe a movie where it doesn't even necessarily look like everybody's dancing to the same thing. But in this case, everybody was there. They were listening to the same thing, which was a rough draft, at least, of the song that Göransson wrote with singer-songwriter Raphael Saadiq to craft this piece, which turned into the blues number I Lied to You, which was the anchor for the sequence. And that's the song that's, I think, nominated for an Academy Award and also won a couple of maybe it didn't specifically win a Grammy, but anyway. And while all this was going on, Miles Canton was singing the whole time, just to bring a little more energy to the sequence. And on the very last day of shooting in Louisiana, after getting the rest of the coverage for that location, the crew literally lit the roof on fire and filmed a live burn of the juke joint ceiling.
I read that Ryan Coogler wanted to add going through the burning roof kind of at the end. I think this was in an article that was talking with some of the visual effects people that were talking about going through that. It's wild. The making of this movie, making this podcast takes a significant amount of effort and production, and there's just 2 of us, and it's just audio but all of the work and care that we take putting into this artistic creation, right? And then you think about this movie, and every movie takes a lot, but this movie just took so much work and care and vision and coordination, and everybody just kind of poured themselves into it. It is really nice to see a movie. I'm not saying other movies don't have that same amount of care and consideration, but it is nice to see a movie that tried this hard get recognized. And I will say, I don't know if this is going to win for Best Picture. I don't know if it should because I haven't seen the other nominees. But if it doesn't win for Best Music, I will be really surprised.
Who knows? Maybe all of those other movies are musicals.
True, maybe. I don't know. But the music for this is just so unbelievable.
We did see One Battle After Another.
That's the only one that we've seen. And I still think Sinners is better.
Yeah.
That's my gut reaction. I'd have to think about it, but...
Yeah, I'm not going to make a statement like that today, one way or the other. I really liked One Battle After Another. And I think One Battle After Another won the Golden Globe for Best Picture. But anyway.
Maybe we'll do an encore on winners, on Oscar winners and nominees and the like. But
before we move on to the next section, I just had a couple of on-set anecdotes.
Yes.
Which I thought might be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Did you see that the garlic that they did sort of the garlic test?
Yeah. I did not see this.
They're trying to figure out if any of them is a vampire. Very reminiscent of the blood test scene from
The Thing.
The Thing.
Yes.
The garlic used was actually white chocolate.
Oh, cool.
But apparently it was extremely sweet, almost to the point where it was gross on its own. And takes required resets because the taste was distracting or overpowering for some of the performers.
Oh, that's funny.
And I think it was Delroy Lindo. He was caught fake eating it at one point, and they were like, you have to eat it. Like I said before, they shot from April to July, and the Louisiana humidity meant sweat was largely real. So anywhere where you see them sweating, it's real. But the production decided to lean into it as a texture for the film rather than artificially trying to dry everybody off and keeping a dry consistency throughout the film.
Interesting.
And I think it was pretty uncomfortable at times. The blues performances were rehearsed extensively, so the juke joint sequence, like we said, could play as lived in but also just to keep some of those performances live. Like, to me, I didn't look this up, but when Sammy's first performing his song First Stack in the car,
Yeah.
that all seems real to me. And I have no idea how they would have mic'd it to get the sound quality that they did. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they dubbed it over. But you see a lot of movies where the music is dubbed. And even when it's dubbed well, you can kind of tell. And that seemed completely natural to me. However they pulled it off, it was great. Lastly, Hoodoo Consultant was brought in to help frame spiritual traditions responsibly and to avoid flattening practices into generic spooky set dressing.
Love that. That's really cool.
Do you have anything else for this section, or should we move on?
No, I think it's time to move on.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Vibe Check. Here we are. Vibe check. Checking the vibes.
Let's check it.
This section's about all the aspects of the filmmaking that make the movie feel how it feels, the mood that it puts you in. All that groovy business, as we said.
Vibes, man.
Vibes. And sometimes a terrible movie can have the right vibes for me, but this movie has it all. And it starts really with cinematography here. We've mentioned the name a few times, but Autumn Durald Arkapaw was the director of photography.
Autumn is the first woman cinematographer that we have discussed in all of our films. It's generally been a male role for all the films that we've seen so far.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that. And she's an American cinematographer. She previously worked on The Last Black Man in San Francisco. She shot Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and also Loki, which I'm guessing that's the MCU movie.
Yeah, there's a Loki show. I'm not sure there's a movie, but
okay,
it's all part of the MCU.
I mean, it's silly to describe somebody's style in just a short list, but she's known for her naturalistic lighting, check, warm skin tones, double check, and intimate framing within epic scale. Check, check, check.
Yes.
For this movie, and there's a lot of great stuff out there, I still get really confused and turned upside down when we're talking about like filming specs and the technology involved and all of that. So I'm going to try not to overstep my knowledge here. But the movie was shot using IMAX and Ultra Panavision 70 cameras. The large format negative in this movie enhances the vastness, especially of those shots out on the Delta. They really wanted to capture sort of the epic scope of the horizon in that part of the country. But they wanted to also contrast that and capture character intimacy, which I think is one area where this movie is so successful. Some of the critics don't agree with me, but guess what? Ain't nobody paying me one way or the other here. I'm just telling you how I sees it. The visual strategy for Sinners was to use a lot of practical lighting, first and foremost. So you get a lot of light from the firelight and the oil lamps that there's being used, which creates a lot of deep shadow and negative space. Some people have said, that when you see a lot of these characters where half their face is in shadow, that's a metaphor for sort of a moral split, or maybe even for some people, the potential for vampirism. Is that the word? Vampirism?
It is. That is the word. I'm wondering, the first time we saw this movie, as you said, was on your birthday in the daytime in our living room where it was very bright. And I saw more watching it the second time around, where we watched in our room at night in the dark with, of course, accurate mood Jalo lighting around us. But it did make a really big difference. I tried to watch a third time just in my office, and the quality, I was like, nah, I can't. I need to watch it on a nice screen.
Well, that was your second time.
That was, yes, it would have been a second time before this third time, but it's not anyway. But I just think that that's really important, that if you have only watched this movie one time or if you haven't seen it at all, I think watching it on the highest quality that you can in the best environment will give you a much better feel for everything that they did. Like, I think very few people actually saw this in its full glory, and yet they still made it for those people that did in the full IMAX experience, right?
Yeah, and that reminds me of a video that you and I watched on YouTube that I wanted.
I just added to the show notes that YouTube video. So there's a YouTube video where Ryan Coogler talks about the different aspect ratios of film, and it explains so much, but specifically talks about the ways, the different versions there were of this movie and how they were different. So whether you saw it in IMAX or at the theater, that I forget all the names of things, but it's really, really great. Check out the show notes for that video. It is fascinating.
And it's helpful just in general too, just about film types and what the differences are and why you would use different film types in different situations. So yeah, check that out in the show notes. Informative and interesting and imperative. Imperative?
Very important. Yeah, that seems right.
And there's plenty to be said about the cinematography of this film. I mean, just the color is so deep and rich, and it's one of those movies. We watched it in 4K. It's just, even when it's just grays and browns and that sort of color palette, those colors still come across so deeply, and I love that.
It's so rich. Like, it's just rich. I think doing this movie right after Candyman is actually a really interesting thing in a number of ways, thematically and in terms of some of the things we're going to talk about, but even in terms of cinematography and like the feel. Candyman also just felt very rich to me and kind of very syrupy and thick. And I think this movie also feels that way to me. So we're talking about vibes, but that, I think, is pulled off in part by cinematography.
And I did like the cinematography quite a bit in Candyman. And as I mentioned, I think in that episode, I can go either way when it comes to sort of 90s cinematography. However, I think that this movie's cinematography kind of blows that out of the water.
Oh, it blows it out of the water for sure. I'm just saying in terms of like the palette and kind of the feel and the realism and kind of being like the visceral nature of the filming, like they're cousins, they're related, right? Even though they are 34 years apart.
And the other thing that was really cool about the cinematography in this movie is that once it moves sort of into nighttime, again, it kind of goes back to the practical lighting. It doesn't overlight the outdoor scenes. Like, they're pretty dark in a way that makes it more realistic. A lot of horror movies that you see, you talk about like maybe Friday the 13th part 5 or something. If there's a night scene, I think of that as more of a daytime. Anyway, they're shooting a lot of light into the woods and all of that. And if you kind of step away from the movie, you're going, where's that light coming from? Like, not in this movie. It really plays into the vibe of it all, which is what we're talking about. So
sure is. Yeah, no, totally and 100%.
But that's about what I've got on cinematography. Why don't you tell me about the special effects? I'm excited about this.
I would love to. So this movie features more than 1,000 visual effects shots, which is the most in IMAX history ever. And I think it started out with something like 300 or 400 that were planned. And then as the movie production continued, they had the most. So I've got a few different areas in terms of special effects, which is both visual effects and special effects like makeup and prosthetics. So first of all, just the twins. As we mentioned before, Michael B. Jordan plays Smoke and Stack. The split screen technique that they used for twinning is fascinating, and there's a bunch of articles out there about it. They looked back at other film references, so things like The Social Network, The Parent Trap, and Dead Ringers, other movies where they have had twins, and they looked at that and then adjusted that to work with what they had, and they created custom rigs to do a lot of this. A lot of times visual effects, especially in Marvel films, where a lot of the visual effects guys came from Marvel, like we mentioned before. And the visual effects in those movies often are far more about being spectacular and kind of big. And they have said that the work in this case was more about subtlety than spectacle. So they had to blend seamlessly. And they were also working with photography, filming on actual film and not on digital. So I don't understand enough about how this stuff works together, but I know that this was an incredible challenge for the visual effects team, and they had multiple visual effects studios working on this. And so they developed a system that recreates the characteristics of celluloid, including the aberrations of the lenses, in order to create these twinning effects. And there was a body double for Michael B. Jordan. He actually played one of the prisoners in the chain gang as they were passing. So there's some interesting pictures out there of Michael B. Jordan standing next to his body double. Their faces are obviously different, but their bodies were very similar. And so they used body doubles, but then they used a halo rig and an A-side, B-side techno dolly split screen technique. I don't know really what those things mean, but there's pictures of them and it's really, really interesting. Something that, and again, I think the first time we watched it, I noticed it at first. I was like, oh, it's Michael B. Jordan as twins. And then after that, they were two different people. You hardly noticed it at all, which it means they did a good job. The final battle with the vampires in the bayou is a great example of how the visual effects and the special effects teams had to work really closely together. There's some amazing behind the scenes pictures of the prosthetics director. Mike Fontaine is the special effects makeup designer, of him working with Remick in that final scene between Remick and Sammy, where he hits him in the head with the guitar. So the guitar hanging out of Remick's face was done with magnets, and the smoke coming out of his skull was not visual effects. That was special effects. That was all there, kind of on there. So they really leaned into using practical special effects for a lot of this. The sun cresting over the horizon at the very end, that was created with CG shots all put together, because they did film at sunrise, but they were not able to capture that exact moment. So there is some CG in that sunrise, but really, really incredible blending of the computer graphics, the visual effects, and the special effects.
If there's any part of the movie that visually I don't like as much, it is in that sunrise.
Fair. And that makes sense, because we definitely lean more towards the practical, realistic effects in terms of preference.
But it's so cool. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. In terms of those practical effects, the makeup, very practical, very gory, super visceral. And it's funny because this is one of those movies that is probably going to be on my list for horror movies for people that don't like horror, if it's not already on that list that I've made. But it is very gory and very graphic if you are not a gore person. Coogler wanted the vampire bites to be massive animalistic wounds instead of two little bites, like in a lot of classic vampire stuff. So Mike Fontaine studied dog and shark bites to get the picture of those bites. And man, is it vicious. I'm thinking about Cornbread's wound to the side of his face. Remick's wounds at the end are so animalistic and brutal. The scratch on Sammy's face that... Yeah. It just so beautiful. He also studied second and third degree burns for that last scene in the bayou. The burns were printed photos of actual burns on temporary tattoo paper. Then they stuck them on Remick's body and peeled them off. So again, very practical effects in a place where you could use CG, but when you're using actual film and not digital to film, using those practical effects gives you that gritty realness, right?
Yeah, keeping as much of it in camera.
Yeah. Candyman was on film, right?
Yeah.
It would have been, because it was the early 90s.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's, yeah, again, I could...
But it wasn't shot on IMAX cameras and Super 70 or whatever I said.
Right. It was not at that really...
Yes,
not at that super high level. But it is interesting, the difference between film and digital. And I think that I'm just fascinated by it. One more little special effects thing. I learned something new. The reflective quality in the eyes of nocturnal animals is called tapetum lucidum. And
tapetum lucidum.
Tapetum lucidum.
Tapetum lucidum.
That could be like a metal song. reflective quality in the eyes of animals. And you notice that the vampires have that glint in their eye. That was created. Mike Fontaine found a contact lens artist named Christina Patterson. She had secretly been developing a contact lens that creates that effect. Also fascinated by this story. Why was it a secret? Why were you secretly developing this? How did they find out? Anyway, her contact lenses were used in the movie. It reflects the light in an actor's eyes and gives them that animalistic look.
Interesting.
Yeah. So again, really leaning heavy on the practical, but then using CG in the places where they needed to, seamless blending that makes this film feel real, visceral. I keep using that word, but it's just the one that keeps coming to mind. Like visceral, like bloody and close and real and gritty. It makes you feel like you're there and like those people are real. Really great example of special effects serving the goal of a film.
Yeah, it really is so seamless. Because not for a moment, except maybe that sunrise, do I feel like there's any digital involved. Obviously, I know that's Michael B. Jordan ×2, but like you said, you immediately forget about it.
Yeah.
Due to the performances and how well the effects were pulled off. But even on any of the gore or anything like that, just none of it. There's nothing that at any moment you're like, oh, that's special effects. Obviously it is, hopefully.
Yes.
But it never crosses your mind.
Never looks like that. What about the last piece of vibes, which is music and sound design for this movie?
Yes, and there's no way to do the music justice.
Not at all. We could do 2 hours on just the music. This
is just going to be a few minute section, so forgive me for that. And there's also a lot about blues music that I'm not well versed in the history of it, so I can't really speak to that part of it.
I have a little bit about that in the themes section because blues is actually like a really deep theme for this that I think connects with some of the other themes too.
But to be fair, I'm not sure how much Ludwig Göransson knew about blues music before he got into this. Obviously a fantastic composer. He's Swedish. He's alumnus of USC, and he's a frequent Coogler collaborator. Say that 10 times fast. Go.
Frequent Coogler collaborator, frequent Coogler collaborator, frequent Coogler collaborator. I think that's it.
I think we've come up with a new tongue twister. You can use that next time you go to school, kids. Frequent Coogler collaborator. Just his selected filmography that I have here. He worked on Fruitvale Station, Creed, Black Panther, which he won the Oscar for his work on Black Panther. He also did the score for Tenet.
Oh.
Christopher Nolan's films. He kind of took over for Christopher Nolan at that point, and I'm a big fan of the Christopher Nolan movies. Tenet is probably one of the least popular ones, but I really like it. I don't know. I'm a weirdo. He also worked on The Mandalorian, Wakanda Forever, and he won the Oscar for his work on Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay.
And now Sinners. And when we're talking about the score for this movie, there's so much going on. It's just like everything else with this movie.
Yeah, it's good.
But
it's good.
At the basic level, it's blues guitar woven into orchestral horror textures. There's choral passages that elevate the mythic tone of everything. There's percussive pulses that signal encroaching threat. Oh, something let's just talk really briefly about diegetic and non-diegetic.
Yeah.
I took film class in college. I wish I had taken so many more. But the only thing that I really remember from that, I remember a couple of things, but the thing that I took from that class was diegetic and non-diegetic. And when music is diegetic, it means that it's coming from a source in the film. So like if somebody's listening to the radio, somebody turns on the radio in their car and you're hearing the song they're listening to in their car, that's diegetic. If something's non-diegetic, that's like the rest of the soundtrack and score that you're hearing, right? So if Back in Black is playing by AC/DC, but it's not coming from a radio or a source in the movie, that's non-diegetic. And a really cool thing that a lot of movies do, just like I like a good match cut in a movie where they cut from, from a scene of, I think in a Friday the 13th movie, to go back to that, the dog getting killed off screen to a hot dog on a grill. I think that happened in maybe part 3. No, part 2. Friday the 13th, part 2. Keep up, Rachel.
Yep.
But a lot of movies will go from diegetic to non-diegetic or vice versa, usually vice versa. You think that you're hearing a movie you think you're hearing a song that's just part of the score, then all of a sudden you realize it's coming from a source in the movie or it's transitioned that way. A lot of diegetic music in this movie that's coming from the actual source in the film, often Sammy or some of the other blues musicians. And they do some really cool tricks going from music to sound design as well. Do you have stuff on sound design?
Just a couple things. There was a few specific moments. There's the match strikes in Smoke and Annie's scene in her farmhouse where like it was in time with the music, his match strikes. So that was really cool. And then when Delta Slim is telling the story of his friend being lynched, and you can hear this was not diegetic versus this was non-diegetic music, except you could hear the angry shouts and his friend being killed kind of in the background of as he told the story.
Yeah, and that wasn't really music at all. So
it wasn't.
I don't think
that's more sound design.
Yes. Yeah, it was like you were hearing the ghosts of that experience like in the background, which I'm not even sure I noticed the first time.
I didn't see it until the second time.
And that happens in a couple of different sequences where something like that happens. Another sound design thing that was really, really cool, I think it was at the end of the big sequence. Mm-hmm. And Miles Caton as Sammy like holds out this big note at the end of the song, maybe. I think this is where it is. It happens somewhere in the movie. And that note he holds out gets transitioned into like the sound of like a wild animal almost. And it transitions to the scene, I think, of Mary outside with Remick and the other 2 vampires.
Bert and Joan.
And it turns into that scene. It's like no longer music, it's a sound effect. And it's so seamless, it blew my mind. But in terms of the music in this movie, obviously it serves several functions, cultural inheritance, but it's also the lure of evil or prosperity or good or, tying all those things together, all the things that music invites both internally and externally.
Yeah, I've got some deep diving on that coming up.
And also signifies vulnerability. I mean, just the music itself. The songs are so good. The score is so good. The sound design, so much attention and care was put into it. Like I just have so much admiration, like you were saying earlier, for the amount of work that had to have gone into this. Because just even when I'm recording these demos, like it takes a lot of work to balance everything. So I don't even know how you add visuals and everything on top of that. So.
That's why we're an audio only podcast.
Audio-eo. All right, that's it for Vibe Check.
That's it for the vibes. Awesome.
I think it's time for us to move into story time.
Okay.
So this is story time. It used to be our first section. Now it's our this section.
It is this section.
Welcome.
Now we're going to talk about the characters. Let's start with Smoke and Stack.
I wanted to mention right off the bat that you pointed out that one of us is definitive. If you and I were the twins,
Yes.
one of us is definitively Smoke and one of us is definitively Stack. Would you like to inform the audience? They probably know by now. Wait, let's give them a moment. Here.
Here's your moment.
If you think that, well, put in the comments right now which one you think is who. Who is what? What is the question? Who's Smoke? Who's Stack between me and Rachel? Okay, that's enough time. Tell us, Rachel.
I don't remember. I'm Stack, right?
Yeah. You're the risk taker.
I'm the risk taker.
And I'm the one who says, well, hold on a second. Let's think about this for a second.
Right, like too much thinking. But it's the balance that you need, right? To have a successful, thriving, stable life with just enough excitement brought to you by your wilds card. Smoke and Stack, do you remember what their names are?
I wrote it down, Elijah and Elias.
Yes. So really fascinating. I noticed this because, of course, with my Bible background, Elijah and Elias. Elijah is an Old Testament prophet. Elias is the Greek form of the Hebrew name Elijah. And so Elijah is used in the Old Testament. Elias is used in the New Testament. So they really are the same man, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. But Smoke, he is blue in the film. He's always kind of dressed in blue. That's his color. He's more serious and concerned. Smoke brings flowers for his baby who's died, which at first he's going to visit Annie, and he kind of brings that moment there is so beautiful. That whole scene between Smoke and Annie is absolutely lovely. And some of his lines in that scene, it still hurts coming back here, but I love you and I miss you. It just gets me every time. Smoke is quick to act. They're both soldiers. They both went to World War I together. But Smoke is the one who talks about it. He says to Sammy at one point, I'm a soldier, boy. You gave me an order, right? So he still holds on to that. And then he is the one who's in that final scene at the end. Stack, who is red in the film, blue and red, he's the risk-taking, the wilder one. His love is Mary, but keeping her safe is to not be with him because she, of course, passes as white. And for a white woman to be with a black man during the time of Jim Crow was a death sentence for both of them. And so he is cruel to her to keep her away, which kind of shows you a little bit about who he is. The boys returned to Clarksdale from Chicago. They encountered racism there too, and they wanted to establish Club Juke, so that's why they've come back. The biggest thing I want to say about Smoke and Stack, I ran into in a couple different places, which will be in the show notes, but one is a creator on Instagram named Talks with a TV Writer, and then another one was from To Whom It May Concern on Medium, which is a blog about internal family systems. But I really like this argument, but that Smoke and Stack are two sides of a person. And so that they are the two sides living within a black man who's been split into by grief and by legacy. One, Smoke, is more careful, and one, Stack, is more reckless, and that those two sides often battle against each other in real life and on screen when they actually are battling against each other, right? But that the role of the black man in American history was such that you have to be careful. You kind of have to present the best version of yourself. The conversation that many black parents have to have with their children, especially their black sons, about what happens if you get pulled over. This is how you should act. That is Smoke. That is that he is trying to keep a defense against chaos. And Stack is that passion. He is reckless. He's idealistic. He wants them to be free. He wants people to have fun and to the kind of passion that is deep within him. Smoke isn't able to kill Stack. He says, I've spent my whole life trying to protect you. And then Stack says, you did. The stoic and practical black man has spent his whole life protecting the part of himself that is reckless and passionate and idealistic. The other interesting note, when they're expressing emotions of love, so when they're in those scenes of lovemaking with their women, it is harder to tell who's who. They take their hats off and it's just Michael B. Jordan. They're just a man. And I thought that this was a really fascinating way to trace them as kind of two sides of the same person, and one of the ways that the characters themselves are kind of exploring some of these themes.
Something that I saw, and I thought I had it in my notes, but I'm not seeing it here, is that, and it goes to what you're saying about being sort of two sides of the same person, that Smoke really symbolized like assimilation, and that Stack would symbolize whatever the right word is for that. That's why I wish it was in my notes.
Except Stack is the one who ends up assimilating because he becomes a vampire. And Smoke chooses not to assimilate. If the vampire, and we're getting into themes here, but if the vampires represent assimilation, unity and peace through assimilation, Stack chose that over Smoke, who chose not to.
Sure.
Although if Annie hadn't begged him to kill her, I wonder if Smoke would have made that choice. Right? So like, man, you're right. Smoke is the one who's trying to, act nice and act good, whereas Stack is a little more reckless, a little more wild. He's that side that wants to just be free and be himself. Yeah, man, there will be theses written about these characters. So that's all I'm going to give it for right now. We've got Sammy Moore, Preacher Boy. The guitar that he carries, the 1932 Dobro Cyclops resonator, was used by Göransson to record much of the score, which I thought was super cool. He is a sharecropper from the sunflower plantation, which they only mentioned briefly, but sunflowers kind of represent rejuvenation and kind of growth and beauty, which I thought was cool. And then, they say truth hurts, so I lied to you. I love the blues. Just such a great line. I know we've talked about that song already, but just love it. Mary, who is Stack's love, Stack pushes her away because he knows it's dangerous for her to be with him, or he believes that it's dangerous. And Mary doesn't want to assimilate. She's kind of forced to assimilate. Her grandfather was half black, which makes her 1/8 black, which still in the United States under Jim Crow was still considered black. But because she passed, she was able to kind of move in white society, but she didn't want it. She wanted to be with the people that she loved. And she ends up using her privilege to try and help, but it goes really badly, right? She's like, I'm going to go talk to those white people and maybe they have money. And instead they turn her into a vampire. So Mary's a very tragic character who kind of has a happy ending, I guess. I don't know. We can talk about that. Annie. Oh, Annie. What an incredible character. I love some of her lines. Smoke asks how she's doing, and she says, no misery's worth complaining about, which I think is a great response. Like, yes, there's misery, but it's not worth complaining about it because that's just her life. As a mother who's lost a child, just this deep pain that she has, but she, as the hoodoo practitioner for her community, she is a caretaker. She is a mother to everybody, including the two young girls who are kind of there when Smoke first shows up. The love that they have, the pure connection, the way their bodies interact, and Annie is the one who knows about vampires. She's the one who has the knowledge. She has the sacred knowledge that helps. The only reason Sammy survives is because of Annie. She wanted to save everybody, but wasn't able to.
Well, and I was going to just chime in and say, I love the women in this movie, the characters, and obviously it's the performances of the actors that gets those characters to where they are. But just the representation of the women in this movie, I think, is phenomenal. You have these, even though we're talking about Smoke being the careful one, they're obviously very dangerous. Or they've lived dangerous lives, I should say. But at the end of the day, they love these women so much, and that's obvious. But they also really rely on their women in their lives so much. One thing that I noticed is that there's at least 2 times in the movie where Smoke and Stack are disagreeing on something, and the argument is won by which side Annie is on. So there's the fight about, or I shouldn't say fight, but disagreement about whether or not they should take
plantation money. Yeah.
And Annie weighs in on Stack's side in that at the end of it. And so they end up taking it.
Yes.
But then they're disagreeing on whether or not they should let who is ultimately the vampires into the juke joint.
Yeah.
And Smoke and Stack are kind of going back and forth on that. And Annie weighs in on Smoke's side. And so they don't let them in, which I thought was interesting, that she kind of is the deciding factor. And one last bit is that when when Stack is bitten by Mary and she's already run off, which we'll get into, but Smoke is holding his brother and just is absolutely devastated. And the first thing he does is look to Annie.
Yeah.
And she like goes off and like takes care of business for him.
Yeah, it's such a great scene. Yeah, Annie she's great. Next up, we've got Remick, our vampire. He has said that the actor has said that he tapped into Gary Oldman's version of Dracula from Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula when he was looking at kind of inspiration for this role. We don't even see Remick until the 43-minute mark. We are a third of the way through the movie before we see this, and the Choctaw Indians chase him to the clan couple's house. And then he quickly decides to eat them.
Nom nom.
Remick is originally Irish, but he is he sounds like he's from North Carolina, right? He kind of changes it up in order to get what he wants. We'll talk a little bit more about what Remick wants going forward. He wants community and friendship. He wants soul, and then he wants Sammy, because Sammy's got soul. Sammy has that ability to connect the living and the dead, and Remick, all his people have been dead for centuries, and so he is looking to create a new family, and he fails. And then Delta Slim, who, again, these supporting actors have such huge impacts on the film. A couple of his lines that really stuck with me. Delta Slim, of course, is an alcoholic blues player that they get to come play at the Juke that night. He is he's a mentor for Sammy. He is a mentor to the twins. And I think one of the most powerful scenes is when he's telling the story of his friend when they played music for the white people and then they lynched his friend. And then he immediately goes into singing the blues. That scene right there is probably one of my favorites. And then in the big music scene, is it where he says, blues wasn't forced on us like that religion. Nah, son, we brought this with us from home. It's magic what we do. It's sacred and big. Just some really beautiful lines capturing what music has meant.
Do you remember the line? Like, I wish I could remember rewinding to when they're driving in the car and he tells the story after seeing the chain gang. And he like tells this just heart-wrenching story and then kind of like, that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. And we heal that with music.
Yep. And then start singing. Really, really great. Other characters that we haven't mentioned, but Grace and Bo Chow, the grocery store keepers, Perline. Sammy names his club after her in his old age. Don't know if you catch that in that final scene, that his club's name is Perline's. We got Cornbread, fantastic bouncer until he's not.
Again, deferring to his wife when he's first approached by the Smokestack twins.
The power of women in this movie is really, really cool. And then Hogwood, the old clan guy who sells them
Double Boo,
the mill, extra boo.
He's worse than Remick.
He is worse than Remick, which, oh man, there's a whole nother thread we could go down. But the clan don't exist no more is what he says to the boys at the beginning, which of course is bullshit and nicely bookended at the end. So those are our characters. Would you like to tell us how they all die? Because most of them, that's why we're here. Please take us into
Murder Mayhem. I will just mention before I get into the nitty gritty of what this section is about, that like kind of what you touched on before, this movie might not be a horror movie. If you're watching it, you could, if you just like caught this on HBO and didn't know anything about it, you could watch the first 45 minutes and have no idea that it's a horror movie and still be enthralled by this. The one little snippet that you get that it's a horror movie is in that opening scene when Sammy is walking into the church. You know, it opens post juke joint siege.
Yes.
He walks in, he's scratched up. That's not necessarily horror, right? But they give you these little flashes, just like a frame or two of some of the vampires of Remick. And I said to Rachel, when we were watching it this time, the first time I watched it, I could tell they were flashing something at us. And with a little bit of the sound that you were giving, you knew it was kind of spooky. But you don't see what they're showing you. After you've watched it, upon rewatching it, you actually can see kind of what they're showing you because your eyes have seen it.
And because Remick, well, I don't want to get too, but there's an echoing in that opening scene of what we've seen in the last scene, right? And so now once you've seen it once, you kind of, it comes through a lot better.
So, cut to 45 minutes later.
Yep.
We see Remick running from, what is the tribe again?
Choctaw.
The Choctaw. Mm-hmm. And he approaches this farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. They show us very soon that it's definitely a Klansman couple.
Yes, it is the nephew of the sheriff, or of
Hogwood.
Of Hogwood, sorry.
And because they show you kind of like a hood in the background, the KKK hood. But Remick's begging to be let in. They don't really want him to they really don't want to let him in. But they eventually do. And off screen, he turns them. Joan goes to the door when the Choctaw arrive, and they basically tell her, I guess you're on your own, but like that, the person we're following is really dangerous. And she goes into the house to find her husband, and that's when we see he's been turned, and we realize there is some horror afoot.
Is there a baby in the house or just a crib?
I didn't see a baby.
Okay. I didn't see a baby either, but I thought there was a crib, and I wanted to ask you if you had noticed a baby.
I didn't notice a baby.
Okay.
This is a fun game. We should always incorporate this into every episode.
Did you see a baby?
Did you notice a baby? So then nothing horror-y happens. We cut to preparing the juke joint, getting the juke joint set up. Party has started, right? We're underway. And I might need your help a little bit on this section. The problem that I had is that I usually take notes as we're watching of every single kill that's going on, but I kind of got into the movie.
Yeah, it's so good. And
I didn't take great notes, so then I had to try to rebuild this section differently than I usually do. But Cornbread goes out. Cornbread was assigned to the door for the evening. He was the bouncer, taking people's money, telling people whether they can come in or not. And he goes to take a pee break out in the woods where we see some scary eyes, right?
Yeah, fireflies that turn into eyes.
Yeah, firefly eyes.
So cool.
And we don't see him for a little bit. Is it in between? I guess it doesn't really matter. But eventually he comes back and he's asking permission to come in.
Yep.
And they're like, why are you asking permission? Just whatever.
I think it's before that. I think Mary goes out while he is peeing.
The Remick and Bert and Joan have already been rejected at the door.
Yes.
Even after they've performed their little song.
Yep.
Please don't. Sorry. There's places where you can go have fun in town. We recommend that. So they leave, but they're still hanging out on the periphery. And eventually Mary's like, maybe we see a short discussion between Stack and Mary. Basically Stack saying, we're not going to be able to survive on this. Right? Is that the impression you got from that conversation? They're not making enough money?
Yes, that they're not going to be able to make enough money to turn this into what they were hoping to make it.
And so she says, well, let me go talk to them. Maybe they've got money. She goes out. Another great scene of her trying to figure out what's going on as she's walking away from them. You see Remick basically just shoot into the air.
So cool. Blink and you miss it.
Blink and you miss it. And again, she basically looks for permission to enter and she's granted it.
Yep.
Mary comes back in. She and Stack hook up, which leads to Stack's death.
Yes.
But Cornbread still hasn't happened yet.
Cornbread's still out there.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Cornbread leaves. Mary goes out. Mary gets turned. Mary comes back in. Mary kills Stack.
Mary kills Stack, bites him, and
yes.
So as that's happening, as she's biting him, Smoke comes in, sees what's happening, and he shoots her a bunch of times.
Yes.
And she just stands up and runs out. So we know we've got a problem.
Yes.
A very serious problem. And they basically, at that point, tell everybody, party's over. Thanks for coming.
Now go out to your deaths.
Well, they don't know that that's what's up.
I know.
And that's what ultimately creates sort of an army of vampires, because all of the patrons, aside from some of our central characters, do walk out to be turned. They do put on a beautiful musical number, these vampires.
They do.
And then we see Cornbread, right?
Yes.
He shows up. He's acting weird, wants to come in. Smoke shoots him.
Yep.
Right? In a little bit of a scuffle, because he basically, at the end of sort of this discussion, he's like, well, if you're not going to let me in, just pay me the money you owe me. And so Smoke pulls out some cash, and as he's handing it over, Cornbread pulls him out of the building.
Yeah.
Smoke shoots him. Cornbread gets back up. And it's really the first visible, well, no, I guess Mary's visible confirmation of vampirism.
But they thought it was a haint. They thought they were dealing with like a haint, which is closer to a zombie, which is like someone who's been possessed by an evil spirit, which is different than a vampire in this cosmology.
And so then Bo.
Poor Bo.
He's like, let me get the car. That would have been me. I would have been Bo in this. I'd have been like, let me just get the car. We'll get the heck out of here. But
I would not have been Grace. I'll tell you that much.
No.
No.
In what sense?
In what she does.
Oh, when she just loses it?
Yeah.
Even after you find out that I've probably marched off to my death, because I think that's what spurs it for her. She sees him.
Well, it's what Remick says about that he's going to go after her daughter.
Oh, right.
That's what I would not have put everybody else's life in danger by inviting them in. I would have come up with another plan.
Well, even if you don't know how you'd act in that situation if you were under the pressure of it all, and you figure that I've traipsed out there. I'm sitting there in my Toyota Avalon as a vampire, and then they've threatened one of our daughters.
That's true.
You might lose it.
Might lose it, maybe.
I've not seen it happen, or at least not to that extent. And so, like we said, Grace loses it a little bit.
Yep.
Tells everybody to come in. Luckily, they've already kind of prepared their weapons and everything at this point. And that's what triggers really the full battle. A full melee erupts. It is awesome. What's really cool about it, too, we didn't talk about it. The Coogler goes back and forth between a couple of different aspect ratios in this movie, depending on the scene and what they wanted to capture for the scene. And it's really, really cool when she calls the vampires in, and it transitions from one aspect ratio to another as they're approaching the juke joint. Like, it kind of opens like a door, right?
Oh, yeah.
The frame has like the black at the top and the bottom, and then those kind of go up and down and exposing the full screen.
Yeah, I noticed that this time. It was really cool.
And so you've got the vampires battling our central characters here. Stack also, in the middle of all this, has revived as his vampire self. He gets involved. We sort of skipped over the garlic test, but that doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah, that's kind of mayhem-y, I guess. Maybe a little bit.
Because it was before everybody came in that Stack revives. That was before the melee.
So he comes back in with the big group.
Right, because Annie had thrown the garlic, vinegar garlic, what do you call it? I bet
Pickled garlic?
Pickled garlic.
Yeah.
She throws the juice on him. That's when she realizes we've got vampires, not a haint.
Yes.
And so he's run out. He's joined Team Vampire. They've all been called in, and people are dying left and right.
Yep.
The saddest moment, obviously, I would say, at least in the first siege, first round, the first surge, is when Stack bites Annie.
So good.
And so Smoke, as she requested, Mercy kills her. So she does not transform. As things go from bad to worse, our protagonists are sort of getting cornered. Delta Slim sacrifices himself, basically calls all the vampires to him, so that who is left there? Smoke.
Sammy and Smoke.
And Perline.
And Perline.
So we have the three left. they go running upstairs, and we have a confrontation between Smoke and Stack. Smoke basically tells Sammy, you got to get out of here, man. And he runs out of the outdoor sort of door.
Like the hay door.
The hay door,
kind
which
of, right?
leads to just a great fall.
Straight down.
Straight down. Looks a little ouchy, but he keeps running. But while Smoke and Stack are battling it out back in the upstairs of the juke joint, Remick ambushes Sammy as he's running away. And like you mentioned, Sammy first uses his guitar and really the steel plate of the top of the guitar, that round part, the soundboard, gets jabbed into his head, into Remick's head. And you can see that we haven't really mentioned the hive mind very much.
Right.
But the vampires have a hive mind. They all kind of react when Remick is stabbed in the head. Meanwhile, back in the juke joint, we think Smoke has overcome Stack and is going to kill him. So we think Stack's dead.
Yes.
Even though Sammy has weakened Remick with his guitar, it looks like Remick might overcome the injury, think Sammy might be about to die, and instead Smoke stakes Remick through the heart, killing him. Meanwhile, the sun is rising, and as we all know, vampires do not do well in the sun.
They do not.
There is not an SPF level strong enough for a vampire to survive the sun. So they all die. At least we think.
As far as we know.
And to top it all off, after that huge battle, Smoke's still got a little bit of energy left. And he's also found out along the way that this was all a huge setup.
Mm-hmm.
This was the Smoke and Stack were able to buy the mill for the juke joint because the KKK had it in for them and thought that this would be an easy way to trap a bunch of black people for them to basically massacre, right?
Yes, and that is based on real life stories of such events happening.
Certainly.
And they know this because Bert is actually Hogwood's nephew, and so when he is assimilated by Remick learns this information, and he's trying to convince them to also join him, and says they were going to blah blah blah.
Well, knowing this, Smoke arms up. He's got a bunch of what I'm assuming, well, I guess they're not necessarily all his army weapons. Some of them might be, but he's got some heavy artillery, we'll say. And as soon as the KKK shows up, he ambushes them, like from a sniper position, basically, and then approaches them with his machine gun. And, it's almost kind of Tarantino-ish. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so. It's a great scene.
And, where he's getting his vengeance, but he does get mortally wounded. And in his, last moments of life, he sees Annie and his baby waiting for him. And then he takes out Hogwood for a brilliant, what we think is the ending of this movie.
Really great. That's good. Yeah, that's all the murder.
That's all the murder. Then we
all
get
mayhem.
And all the mayhem.
Yeah.
Unless you count finding out that Stack lived.
I guess that's somewhat mayhem, but
we see him in the 90s. I kind of hope they do a sequel.
Coogler has said they're not going to turn this into a franchise.
I figured they probably wouldn't.
But there may... I also heard something about potentially a prequel with Remick, which would be kind of interesting.
There's so much you could do.
There's so much you could do. Okay. Now we get into the really deep stuff, like we haven't already for the last however many minutes we've been gushing about this film. There are so many themes running through this, and I'm just going to hit them one at a time, jump in. The first theme I want to talk about, power of music, specifically the blues and the history of music. So even the very opening myth at the beginning of the film talks about musicians selling their soul to the devil, right? That's inspiration from the blues legend of Robert Johnson, who supposedly sold his soul to the devil for musical talent. But it talks about music transcending the boundary between the living and the dead. It's a tool for healing and a defense against evil. The location of the film, Clarksdale, Mississippi, that's the birthplace of the blues. Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, Sam Cooke, all from Clarksdale. Interesting little story. There were no theaters in Clarksdale, so a resident of the town currently penned an open letter to Coogler and the cast with hopes of getting it screened. And Coogler made it happen. They were going to bring in a projector. And so that was a little interesting tidbit that they thought people of Clarksdale should be able to see it. About 15,000 people today, very small town, but, you know, a very on-purpose setting for this film. Again, Delta Slim's story of his friend who was lynched and then goes directly into the blues. One Reddit comment said, that told me more about the history of the blues than any class or Wikipedia article ever could, which I thought was so lovely and beautiful. It is, again, visceral and deeply meaningful to see that is where the blues came from, was from this deep history of pain and oppression. Delta Slim says during that story, white folks like our music, but not the people who make it. Also, Sammy literally kills Remick with his guitar, right? So music is a defense and healing. So that theme runs strong through the film. I was fascinated by the discussion of hoodoo and spiritual traditions. Annie uses hoodoo to protect others from vampire threat. Wunmi, the actress, comes from the Yoruba people, but she had to learn about the Ifa divination system, which was what influenced hoodoo. The divination system relies on signs that are interpreted by the diviner. So Annie kind of throws out a bunch of bones and things to figure out what's going on, rather than a spiritual mediumship, rather than kind of getting a message from the divine. That the divination in Ifa is reliant on signs, which is really interesting. And Wunmi has said that she actually had to do a lot of unlearning her own thoughts about hoodoo and voodoo and those traditional spiritual practices. And she credits this role with kind of opening her mind to a lot of her own tradition that she wasn't familiar with. Oh, Annie was a lot of unlearning of preconceived ideas I had of traditional indigenous religions. I loved seeing this in this movie and think it's a really beautiful representation of something that we don't usually see anything beyond kind of a stereotypical representation of voodoo. A lot of our early zombie films, for example, were voodoo zombies and not undead zombies, or not whatever, zombies from some other source, but they were zombies raised from the dead. And I think it's a really great to see that representation. One theme I wanted to talk about, which we've hit on a little bit, was kind of like true love, right? And we've talked a little bit about the relationships of the women. So maybe true love and the role of women and men together, like that, those partnerships. The line when Annie and Smoke are in her house and she goes, "Why are you here?" It was supposed to be, "Why are you here, Smoke?" And she says, "Elijah, why are you here?" Annie calls him by his name, and later Mary calls Stack by his name, Elias, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the women in their lives call them by their true names, which is so meaningful, especially when we're talking about folk religion and people's names having such deep meaning. As part of this theme, there's also a centering of female pleasure in this movie that is beautiful and refreshing. So Stack teaching Sammy the way to make a woman happy, and then Sammy and Perline, where he pleases her. The only point of oral sex is pleasure. There's no procreation, there's no moving on, right? And especially pleasing of women, like. And then even later, Remick talks to Grace about how he knows what Bo likes to do to her. Like, they talk about oral sex a lot in this movie, but from an entirely female-focused perspective. The clitoris is the only organ that is only purely made for pleasure. Because, you know, the male equivalent is made for other things as well. And so the fact that this is centered for these women is really, really cool, really interesting perspective. Also, in the preparation montage, when they are getting the juke set up for the party, there's all these loving couples. I wrote in my notes, all these scenes of loving, lovely couples. Like, there's this beautiful connection and relationship between all of our couples that I just think is so nice and beautiful. And Smoke remembers all of that as he's preparing to take the clan out. He's like remembering what that was like at the very end. Like, that was pure joy. And Sammy's line, his last line, you know, before it all went to hell, it was the best day of my life. The fact that you can have these two things juxtaposed, it's just so hopeful. And then the last image we have of Annie as the mother goddess, she's nursing her baby. She's all dressed in white. And she says to Smoke, Elijah, you put that cigarette out, you can hold her. I don't want any of that smoke to get on her. So I just gave myself chills. Like such a beautiful, you do not see relationships portrayed with that much depth and that much beauty and that much passion, especially not in horror movies very often. So I think that was an important theme. And you pointed out earlier kind of those moments where Smoke looks to Annie, right? And yeah, I just really, really love that in this movie. And makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. We've got fellowship and belonging, which kind of goes with assimilation and integration. But Remick talks about community, and community is portrayed as a strength in this film. Belonging and fellowship. When Annie convinces them to take the money, she says, you know, they need a place that belongs to them. Like that's what they need, that caring for people includes giving them a place where they can be. Remick craves connection and community, and he sees the Black community as something that he can kind of come in and take over to get some of what he's craving. He presents vampirism as the solution to loneliness and oppression. Remember, Remick says, we believe in equality and music. Why can't we all be family when they're not letting them in because they're white? And he's like, oh, but I thought we were all one. But they're really predatory monsters who want to come in and eat everybody's faces, right? Like using community and oneness and kind of being like, oh, well, don't be prejudiced against us. He also, and I don't have time to get into all of these as much as I want to, but Remick offers gold coins as a promise to like lure people, right? Like he offers that to Joan and Bert, right? Does he offer them gold?
I'm not sure about that, but definitely Mary.
He offers them to Mary, but there's one other person he offers gold to at one point. Maybe it's Cornbread. I don't remember. Or maybe Cornbread shows there's gold at one other point and I can't remember right now. But he lures Mary in with the gold and then the promise of fellowship and love.
I think it's Mary showing it to Stack.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, that he has gold. And this kind of is connected to the whole assimilation integration thing. People on the internet are very split about who represents assimilation, what the vampires represent. So I just have a bunch of comments on this, and please jump in if you have anything to say. So vampires are cut off from their community unless they assimilate others to be like them, and then they are literally all just one big melting pot. This represents that white Europeans gave up parts of their own unique culture and community to assimilate into whiteness in America, and which I think is really interesting. Mary wasn't assimilated by choice. We talked about this earlier. Her Black family and a segregated society both forbid her from being a part of her own community. And yet, even though she ended up with a white husband that she never wanted, she says, she was kind of forced into that assimilation. But then that safety of passing for white is also the same thing that gets her killed. Because she's like, oh, I can go talk to them because I'm white. And so I'll be able to go out. And she uses that. And that is what gets her killed. Sammy represents positive assimilation. His performances pull people together and call the spirits of musicians from the past and the future to the present, including the Chinese ones for Bo and Grace, and brings everybody together. This is a really interesting point that all three, Sammy, Stack, and Mary, chose to assimilate. And that's why they end the film in the same place. They all chose to assimilate in their own way. And Sammy assimilated, but his dad wanted him to assimilate to the church and like the Christian religion. And Sammy chose instead to kind of go out into the world and bring his music out there. Vampires offer the temptation of freedom in the form of assimilation, but it costs individuality. And so Bert and Joan are echoing Remick's thoughts and have no personality of their own, which is kind of scary, right? Like assimilation means you lose that individuality, but it's also the goal is to assimilate to wherever you go. You know, it's like the melting pot versus the stew where everybody keeps their own identity and doesn't assimilate, but all of it together works really well. There's just one line from Grace that I wrote down that I kind of think captures this. She says, we have to fight them. They're taking our families, which I think feels like what happens to a lot of people when they're fighting assimilation. I don't know if you have anything else on that. There, again, a lot of disagreement and discussion about this. There's a few links in the show notes, but really interesting conversation. So assimilation goes into appropriation. Again, a very hot topic on the internet.
This is about where more mine fits in.
Okay, cool. So white folks have benefited financially from stolen Black culture, full stop. That is what it is. The blues were stolen and turned into rock and roll. Stolen is a tricky word. I'm not sure where I personally stand on this, and I'm not making a stand on whether Elvis is bad or good, but the bottom line is that he did things that Black musicians did and got credit for them that they did not get credit for. That is a fact that we know about the history of music, about rock and roll music and our music, and that white folks have benefited financially. Delta Slim's story about the party is the example of that, where the white folks were happy to have them play but don't want them to have the money or what comes from it. And so the blues deeply, fundamentally is a part of that story. In the film, white culture is a predatory force drawn to Black culture and stealing it. So in this way, Remick is not just about assimilation, but also about appropriation. Forced assimilation and conformity is the villain, not diversity and community. So it's the forced assimilation and the conformity that is presented as bad in this film, not the diversity and community. Like there was crazy diversity in the music montage, right? You've got all these different things. Like Sammy's blues are drawing on ancient tribal rhythms and other music, and the rock of the future is going to draw on Sammy's blues, and that is presented as good and full and rich and lush. But the vampires' music is not. The vampiric folk musicians, fascinating. White colonization of Black music, particularly the blues. So Pick Poor Robin Clean is actually a traditional blues song, which I did not know. And so the first song that they sing is a folksy version of that traditional blues song. Now, Wild Mountain Thyme, which is the second song they sing to Mary, that is a Scottish or Irish folk song that was very popular during the American folk music revival, I think in the 70s. And so, but they open with a song that, of course, this was on purpose because everything in this movie is on purpose. But they open with kind of an appropriated song, a song from another culture, which it was a beautiful song. And as a musician, I love to play and hear music from different cultures, redone, reimagined. And yet they were using this music to try and gain entrance so they could eat people's faces. So what is Coogler saying? I don't know. But I thought that those were some really interesting point. This is not a simple, like, it is bad to play music from someone else's culture, but it is saying something about it, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that there's a distinction to be made between the art of music and the business of music.
Oh, preach.
Which I think are very separate things, but you get, especially for anybody who is passionate about music, is maybe a music creator or artist in some way. Obviously, there's a desire to make a living from your music. And I think it's tricky because like styles of music are maybe kind of, if you want to think of them as like drink mixes, right? Like, and if they're all just sort of out there, eventually they all seep into each other. And I think that's what's great about music. And it's tricky because I think it's impossible to create music that's not dependent on something that comes before it. And I think that's a wonderful thing about it. But especially if you're intentionally doing something to advance business through music that relies on something that's taken from somebody else or somebody else's culture, that's when you get into sort of the trickier area of things. And where is that line drawn? Where is the intention? What is the intention of? Because I think there's plenty of unintentional appropriation that happens if you want to talk about appropriation. And I'm not taking a stance here either way. But one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if it's really it ties into what we're saying here, and I don't know if it's a theme or if it's more of like a fan theory that this movie in part is about the exploitation of particularly Black people and Black culture by the music industry, and the vampires being the music industry. Mm-hmm. And
I buy that.
Everything around that. And I don't know if that was an intentional thing by the filmmakers or if that's just an observation, because obviously there's a lot you can take from a movie that wasn't necessarily intended.
Totally. But I don't see how it would be unintentional given the theme, the other themes and everything else. That's the choice to set this story during Jim Crow, the choice to have a blues musician, all of it. I think it's very, very intentional. Interesting. I was just thinking Sinners and Candyman go together really well. What was that movie we just watched? Was it with Jamie Foxx as a football player?
Oh, him.
So we just watched that. I know people didn't love that quite as much, but I think that movie really interestingly looks at the exploitation of Black athletes within a system. So I wonder these two movies together in conversation might be really interesting. So put a pin in that for later. If you haven't seen him, it's another really interesting movie. But I think it's not nearly as explicit about the themes as this is, but I think it plays into some of that. If you haven't seen that, I would recommend it. Yeah, really interesting stuff about this. And I think as musicians, this is something that's really interesting. And particularly as musicians who are writing songs that are inspired by somebody else's art.
Right.
Like we actively are taking a piece of art and writing something that is inspired by it. But where do we cross that line from like appropriating and inspiring, right? Like, I don't know. A couple more themes that I just want to touch on really briefly. Jim Crow, racism, freedom. Obviously, the setting is really purposeful. The two grocery stores across the street from one another hit me really hard. I don't know about you. We grow up in the United States hearing about Jim Crow and what it was like, but it was almost 100 years ago at this point, several generations ago.
Oh, that's why there's two grocery stores.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that.
Oh, really?
I mean, I understood that they were running these two grocery stores, and I was like, I just didn't quite put it all together.
I had never thought about what that meant either, because we, of course, have grown up in New England where we didn't have Jim Crow. We just had quiet racism, the kind that Smoke and Stack encountered in Chicago when they came up here, up north. We're not in Chicago. We established that 2 weeks ago. So we didn't have Jim Crow up in the north, and so I think that seeing those two grocery stores was really, I loved that. I think it really humanized Jim Crow for me in a way that, I haven't really thought about it because I don't have to think about it because it's not a part of my story. So I'm grateful for that aspect. Other point, if the vampires weren't coming, the clan was anyway. All of the mortals were doomed from the start, which is really interesting. It's not just that like the vampires are offering another way out. They were all going to be killed in the morning, which is terrifying. Smoke and Stack wanted to open a juke joint by us, for us. Oh, Annie said they want to feel wanted. The juke isn't just about making money. It's about giving Black folks a place that's theirs. I thought when they were debating whether to let the vampires in before they knew they were vampires, they're talking about, Smoke says, like, what happens if one of them, like somebody looks at their woman a little too long, right? Like it's fine until they get upset. White people, I wrote this in my notes as we were watching, white people are dangerous because they're sensitive and they're entitled. They put everyone in danger just with their presence. And that's true. That is part of the truth of this place and that time. And that legacy is something I think many people who do not have that in their families and in their heritage don't have to think about because it never happened to us. And so I deeply appreciate this being put into a story form that allows me to kind of put myself in that spot and think about it in a way that I've had the privilege to not think of. And I think, without going too deep, but I think that is a privilege to not have to worry about that in the day to day. And so I'm grateful for artwork that is film and music and books that allow me to experience that, because otherwise I wouldn't even know that it was there. It would be an invisible privilege that I didn't recognize. So, and the final scene, a Black man gunning down the Klan, was great. Another film, we haven't seen this movie yet, but I also know there is some people killing Nazis, is in Silent Night, Deadly Night remake. That was highly publicized. I don't know anything else about the remake, but I know about that scene. So
again, that reminds me of both Django Unchained and Inglourious Bastards.
Yes. Yes, that very visceral, if we're talking about that word again. Last theme, the movie's called Sinners, right? Sin. Sammy at the very beginning is reading the scripture that his dad has given him. And it's from 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man, but with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. Sammy's dad is worried that he's going to be taken by the world and taken into sin. So the concept of good and evil in this movie, we could talk another 20 minutes about what is good, what is evil, who is good and who is evil. Samuel and Elijah are both prophets from the Old Testament. They were about 200 years apart. Elijah is Samuel's spiritual successor, but I don't think it's a mistake or an accident that those are the names that were chosen. They're biblical names of prophets who were there to point out what the people were doing wrong, what was pissing God off. That was their role. Smoke and Stack's dad was evil. Sammy's dad is a preacher. So again, two brothers that kind of represent these two things. And then Remick baptizing Sammy in the bayou. So a lot of religious imagery that is kind of cool to pick apart as someone with a theology background. That's all I have written. Obviously, there's so much more. But I do want to say, and I think this applies to everything, but especially this movie, which has inspired so many conversations in the wider culture. We don't need every theme to wrap up neatly in a movie. I think what's important is the fact that these stories wake us up and start these conversations so people are actually talking about these things. I don't think a movie has to say something definitive, and I don't think we all have to see the same thing. I found some really interesting online arguments where people were like, no, the main theme is freedom. No, the main theme is assimilation. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
That's not why we talk.
Deal with that.
I know, but that's not why we talk about these themes, right? Like, I read these discussions because I'm looking for things other people have seen that I haven't seen. It's not that there's a right answer. Sometimes school does us a disservice, I think, by saying, what is the theme of this book? There's not a theme. There are multiple levels and multiple ways, and that is what is so incredible about art, whether it be film or music, both of which are types of art that we care a lot about. I think the fun part and the exciting part and the transformative part is the questions that we ask and the discussions that we have based on the art, not what the artist was trying to say necessarily. So I just wanted to close out that part with that. We can all agree or we can disagree. So if you disagree, tell us. I would love to hear your perspective. I am not sure of anything, and that's what's great about being alive, is that I always get to change my mind.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a definitive answer. They're wrong.
That's the only definitive answer.
And I'm not saying that Ryan Coogler and the other filmmakers didn't come into this with a lot of intent and really wanted to raise a lot of these themes. I'm certain of that they did.
Oh, yeah. It was on purpose, but I'm not sure if there's an answer.
Right.
Yeah, I think that that's part of what's cool about the films.
And maybe if there was an answer, things would be a lot different than they are today.
Preach. To close out story time, who's your favorite character?
I love so many of these characters. Our central protagonist is rich with phenomenal characters. So I'm going to go a little bit wild card tonight, and I'm going to say Grace.
Ooh, explain that for just 30 seconds.
There's just something that intrigues me so much about her. I mean, it would be easy to go with Annie for me. I thought she was phenomenal as well. But I just like the little sort of secondary part of Grace. And when she sort of enters the film, the first thing she does is go head to head, toe to toe with this renowned gangster who just shot two people out in the street.
That's
which
right.
I forgot to include that in Murder Mayhem. Certainly a bit of mayhem, and she looks him straight in the eye and negotiates with him like he was just teaching some, a younger kid outside.
That's right. What
So
a great
you
point.
instantly know that she's not going to mess around.
Yeah.
But that's juxtaposed to later in the movie when everybody's at the juke joint and there's a moment where the camera's following behind her, I think sort of near the beginning of the big scene.
Yeah.
And she's just grooving
Yeah.
as she's walking.
Her and Bo are so sweet, and then they die in fiery mess together.
What about
that's
you?
a great choice. For me, it is Annie. She is just so many things that I admire and aspire to. And I love, there was never a question. I don't know if I would be so definitive in rejecting vampirism, for example. Like the appeal of being forever, but her understanding of life and death, not as absolutes, but instead of, she's got her baby waiting for her. Like that just, I love Annie so, 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 so much. And she is a caretaker and a mother for her community, and she loves her man, but she also does not allow him to treat her poorly. She's not pining for him. She's an equal. They are a partnership. They are a reflection. Together they make a whole. And I think it's just beautiful. I love their relationship, and I think Annie's the best. Do you have a favorite quote?
You already said it.
Oh, sorry. I always do that to you. It's because I have the characters and I write down quotes while we're watching.
There were plenty of good ones, but I don't have it written right in front of me. But the line that Smoke says to Annie in the scene in her store.
Yes. Which line is it? Because there was
I miss you. I love you.
Oh, I miss you. It hurts to be here. Yeah. Or does he say it? Oh, that's too far. I've gone too far. It still hurts coming back here, but I love you and I miss you. Yeah, and she makes him say that, right? Yeah. Like she's like, no, I'm going to make you say that shit. Like she is just so strong, and he knows and he is so vulnerable. He loves her so deeply, but still left after the baby. So good. My favorite quote is also from Smoke. Little bit different. Haven't mentioned it yet. It is, I know plenty of musicians. I ain't never met a happy one.
Yeah. Same thing with stand-up comedians too, I think.
Oh my goodness, so much.
Any artists.
There's being a conduit for whatever it is that we do, whether it's film or music. You have to show up and do the work. You have to sit at the piano, sit at the guitar, sit at the keyboard, put the pen to paper. But once that art starts to come through you, I think the opening of that door comes from sorrow and comes from struggle and pain. And I think that maybe that is why artists are generally at least have a wider range of emotions, perhaps, than your non-artist folk. Yeah. So that's story time, man.
Yeah. That being said, speaking of art and artists and music, shall we head into our open mic?
Yeah, it's time for the open mic.
And I will just say ahead of time, we had some trepidation on our music for this movie.
Yes.
And
feels almost sacrilegious.
Yeah. So, know that going into this, that we certainly were, I don't even know how to express it necessarily, just the thought going into trying to create music for a movie like this and with the themes that it had. And I even considered maybe doing no music for this week.
We talked about that.
Then we also talked about doing a cover of the credit sequence song.
Yep.
With Miles Caton and who else sang it?
Alice, I forget. I wrote it down. But the last time I seen the sun, Alice Smith.
Alice Smith, thank you. Then I looked into the legalities of that, and it's a little bit more complicated, even though we would have no problem doing that cover at a live show. And maybe someday we'll have a live show and be able to play some of these songs that we've written, and maybe we'll throw that in as well. But there are complications with including a song like that, even as a cover in a podcast. So we have written our own original song as per usual, and I'm glad that we did. I think it would be easy to do something like I don't know what Rachel has done yet. I intentionally avoided trying to do a blues song or anything like that. I'm still trying to play something that is my style from my heart that was inspired by this movie. And the gimmick for this week was no names, which I think is a good gimmick.
Perfect.
For us for this kind of movie, especially for this scenario where I'm saying that there is so much trepidation, because we're not allowed in the no names gimmick. We're supposed to not really mention specifically things from the movie.
It's supposed to be a song that could be from anywhere, but that if you know it's inspired by the movie, it makes sense. But
exactly.
Yeah. So I completely agree. And but still, that being said, I can't wait to hear your song. Let's get set up.
All right. We haven't flipped. I'm just going to let you go first.
Okay, great.
I don't have strength to flip at this point.
Fair.
Here's the open mic.
Okay, here we go. This song inspired by this movie, which of course, as we've mentioned, was a really stressful thing to do because there's so much good music and so much to draw from. This is such a rich text in terms of inspiration. But I will say, I did draw from the movie. I also drew from a Valentine's Day card that you wrote to me this year.
Ooh.
You.
Oh, okay,
yes.
good.
Okay, yes. The only Valentine's Day card I got. And so this is inspired by a lot of things. Oh shit, I didn't come up with a name. I think maybe The Other Side. Maybe you can help me come up with a name for it afterwards. I was so worried about writing the song, I couldn't quite get it. But all right, here it is. This is The Other Side. Maybe.
Miseries abound, but I can't complain. It's always been and always will be the same. When you say my name, no, you see me so true. Whatever life brings, I know I'll get through. 'Cause you see me, whether it's good news or problems I bring. And I see you, love of my life past when this life is through. And until we meet on the other side. People all around, but I'm still alone. Don't care what they see, 'cause they're not my home. When I say your name and I see you so true, my world is complete because I have you. 'Cause you see me, whether it's good news or problems I bring. And I see you, love of my life past when this life is through. And until we meet on the other side. Guidance and comfort through pain and despair. These are the gifts that you bring. Love when it's true, just like music can pierce through the veil. So my love, let us sing. Because you see me, whether it's good news or problems I bring. And I see you, love of my life past when this life is through. And until we meet up on the other side.
Yay! That was lovely, honey.
There's just so much in this movie, but you quoted Stack and Mary, but also Smoke and Annie's Love, and especially those moments that I think you mentioned a little while ago, like when he looks to her, and you know, that the love that's represented between these two couples is just so beautiful and pure and kind of transcends life and all the troubles it has. And so yeah, this one was for the movie, but also, you know, a little bit for you, dork. So don't say I never write you anything.
Well, just don't forget how to play it.
It's pretty hard when we're writing a new song every 2 weeks.
I know.
But yeah, if I had a little more time with this one, I could tidy it up a little bit. But that's the joy of the open mic, right? Is that we're not our perfect selves, but we are ourselves. And yeah, so there you go.
Well, thank you, hon. That's very nice. My song's not about you.
That's okay.
My song is very different.
Awesome. Can't wait. Let's do it.
But I loved it.
Okay, good. I'm really glad.
All right. I'll get set up.
Okay, cool.
All right. So this is going to be my song based on Sinners, inspired by Sinners. It is called Yet We Breathe. And as we established much earlier in the program, I am the Gemini of the family. I would say, because this is a pretty pessimistic song, it doesn't encapsulate my entire being. It's just a part of me. I like to think I'm still relatively optimistic, but I was kind of looking at, I can't speak to the injustices the characters in our film experienced, but there are certainly a lot of other injustices in the world right now, particularly the disparity of wealth between classes, that sort of thing. And I think we would all say there's a lot going on. We don't talk about them on this program because we came here to get away from that. But that's sort of what I was thinking about when I wrote this. Yet we breathe.
Pretty sure it's never getting better. Pretty sure we reached peak humanity. And now it's like the sun is setting. We want out, but there's no safe way to leave. But I do believe. Well, I do believe they're out to get us, and never let us realize our true potentiality. No, it was never ever meant to be, and yet we breathe. I'm pretty sure we'll never get the answers, the serum that would heal society. And instead we're at each other's throats. We've given up on peace and harmony. I do believe. I do believe they're out to get us. They'll never let us realize our true potentiality. No, it was never ever meant to be, and yet we breathe. I wish I knew a way to save the day, aside from simply playing it safe. So led astray, how am I so amazed? I guess I thought we'd have it the same way. Well, they're out to get us. They'll never let us realize our true potentiality. Was never ever meant to be, and yet we breathe, and yet we breathe.
I was still grooving when you stopped, which is the point.
Yes.
I like it a lot.
Thank you.
And I think the fact that both of our songs were inspired by this movie have nothing, you could hear either one of them and not know that it was inspired by this movie unless we told you. but that they're both very true to the spirit and the message and the themes of the movie just is another example of how deep and layered and beautifully complex this film is. I think we did an okay job. This was like one of the hardest.
Yeah.
To feel like I was doing some kind of justice to it. But yeah, I like that little song. I guess it's pessimistic, but it also sounded angry. And I like that. I think that's accurate right now.
Yes, indeed.
That's the closest we'll ever get to talking about politics.
Yes.
All right. Nice job, babe.
Thank you, love.
All right. Let's get back to our spots.
And wrap it up. Okay. We are losing light, which for this movie means that we're safe.
Are we?
Yeah. Oh, no.
No, the opposite.
It's the opposite.
No.
Oh, no. I've been looking forward. And now, oh, no.
We're losing light. And
I'm
if we don't come back next week, you'll know somebody let someone into the house.
I definitely am losing my brain.
The kids know not to let anyone in who asks to be invited in, right? We should make sure. That's like a life skill I feel like you should teach the kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
But
let's work on that.
so that was our deep dive on Sinners. In 2 weeks, we will be doing another deep dive on another movie.
Yes.
Should I spin to find out?
Let's spin to find out. Spin the wheel of horror. Are you going to list off what our options are?
I am.
Yes. I like almost every movie on this wheel, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're just, by like, you mean ones that aren't too scary for you.
You're right.
We have Sleepaway Camp,
Yes.
Alien, Slumber Party Massacre, Carrie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Child's Play, 30 Days of Night, Intruder, A Quiet Place, Smile, The Strangers, A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Shining, and then, of course, the sequel, which if we spin that, I'll spin a second wheel to find out what sequel of what film we've already talked about we could watch. So,
Okay. Yeah, the only one that's on there that scares me a lot is Smile.
I know, it's good.
It's so good, though. I will be happy to watch if we spin it, but here we go. Oh my gosh.
All right, a big deviation from this week's episode. We'll be watching Slumber Party Massacre.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Very, very cool. Very different
And
vibe.
Let me spin real quick our wheel of gimmicks here so we can
Yes.
find out what our songwriting gimmick will be to give us a little bit of guidance, some, what do you call those things? The bumpers on the, when you're bowling?
Yeah.
Guardrails.
Some guardrails.
I got freestyle. Do you want me to spin again?
We just did freestyle for Candyman.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's spin again. The bumpers are actually really helpful.
Yes.
And I wonder if other artists have opinions on that. But when you give yourself limitations, it often forces you to make decisions in a different way.
It helps to be able to write them so quickly.
Yes.
All right, this one's called Scene Swap.
Okay.
And let me tell you what Scene Swap is.
I don't know if we've done that one before.
Okay. Yes, we have not had Scene Swap yet. And I think that we've landed on a good movie for it. So basically, the idea is to place a moment or maybe like an idea from the movie in a new setting or era.
I was just thinking of this movie and how much fun this is going to be.
Yes.
I love this movie. All right, cool. So scene swap. So take it and put it in a different era. Ooh, Slumber Party Massacre is early 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Oh, really neat. Okay, I am excited about this. Fantastic. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us for such a long time. We're really excited about awards coming up and hoping that Sinners grabs a few of those statues.
Sure. And in continuation of the awards idea, I think for next week's encore episode, we should just do a discussion about horror and awards.
Love it. Yeah. there's plenty to talk about there. That's
So,
cool.
We'll talk about some of the movies that have been nominated in the past and maybe this year as well, because Sinners is not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about Slumber Party Massacre. Where can they find us in between those times?
All right. Well, you can find us at OMNLD Pod on all of the social media places, the Insta and the TikTok and the Blue Sky and the X and the YouTubes. And you can also find me at Chill Out Barbara. That is my personal name. I'm also on Letterboxd, so if you want to see what we've been watching, I keep track there and I write little reviews there as well. So that's kind of fun. And I also sometimes say things on my own personal. But yeah, you can email us at omnldpod@gmail.com. We also have a website now, omnldpod.com. And if you know anybody who would like this kind of content, if you know a horror person in your life who you think might have fun talking about this stuff for hours, please send this to them. We want to get it into the ears of those who will most appreciate it and keep the conversation going online. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, word of mouth's great. If each of you tell one person you know that would like this, that would be a big favor to us. We'd appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening this week. We had so much fun watching this movie, and I had so much fun discussing it with my Annie.
Aw, babe.
Babe.
I'm that makes me blush.
And I am Smoke. So
You are Smoke, so it does make sense that I am Annie. And actually you did kind of cite that scene in the movie in one of your Valentine's Day cards to me this year.
I already forgot about that.
I did not, because it was the most romantic thing I've ever seen. So yeah, love, horror and love. I love you.
I love you.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
See ya.
See ya.
I stole your line.
You did, you jerk.